Hi, everyone, and welcome to the annual partner training of 2025. This is our 23rd year of monitoring, and I'm Megan Hickey. I'm the coordinator of the LaRosa Partnership Program. I work for the Vermont DEC in the Rivers Program in the biomonitoring section. And this is actually a re-recording of the first part of the training because we forgot to start the recording on time. So about 10 slides in or so, you'll see it switch to the actual live training that happened. And not here with me at the moment, but who will show up later on in the recording is Benny Marks, who is the Eco AmeriCorps member serving with us for this year. Okay, so this is just a guide to teams, which we don't need to do for the recording, so I'm going to skip through this. And then we also went through introductions and had everyone put their name and organization in the chat. And then here's the agenda of what we're covering in this training. We went through program overview and updates, the LaRosa sample plan, field sampling supplies, sampling protocols and quality assurance, flow observations, how to use the Survey 123 app, and sample storage and preservation. And then lastly, we went through safety in the field, sample analysis results and accessing your data. And then we didn't get quite through the next section. We briefly touched on how we use the LaRosa data, and we had a kind of informal Q&A with some Vail staff. So that included Karen Brack from the Vail lab, who's an inorganic chemist. And then we also had Kelly Ross, who's the sample receiving staff, who processes and receives all the samples when they arrive at the lab. All right, so first I just want to start out with a thank you to everyone. We really appreciate all that you do. It's amazing how many samples and how much data we collect in just one summer. So we really appreciate all of the effort that goes into coordinating all of this sampling and all the sampling that you go out and do. You are a huge part of this, the success of this program, and essential to the data and sample collection. So very much huge thank you for being here and for showing up and for caring about your streams. Next, we just have a few program updates to go through. So first, I just wanted to point out that we have a new general email address that we would like you to use instead of emailing me or Benny directly. This way, we both can see all of the emails that are coming in and access them at any time. So that new email address is anr.declarosa@vermont.gov. So again, please use that instead of emailing us directly whenever possible. Second, many of you probably remember Jeff Merrill. He did the sample pickups last year. He'll be doing those again this year. And then just like last year, the lake tributary sites are going to be a coordinated effort of both the LaRosa program and the lake slave monitoring program. So just like last year, you'll be following LaRosa sampling protocols when sampling the lake tributaries, but then doing things on a lake slave monitoring program schedule. So sampling 6 times instead of 8 biweekly and starting in June. And Mark will be doing a lot of the coordinating and delivering of supplies and organizing all of that in coordination with the Lake Slay Monitoring Program. So if you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to either Mark or I. We're happy to answer your questions. But this just makes things easier for everyone if we kind of keep the lake trib sampling together with the lake volunteer sampling as well. And then some just summary facts. We have 19 participating core LaRosa groups. We have 15 lake tributary collaboration groups for a total of 193 core sites and 61 lake tributary sites, which altogether will equate to about 4,300 samples collected this season. Okay, and then because we have some new people, I did want to just go over briefly the overall LaRosa program and the program structure. So the LaRosa Partnership Program began just over 20 years ago in 2003, and the idea behind the program was that we could use state resources and unused laboratory analysis capacity to support already ongoing stream monitoring projects that were happening at a handful of some of our partner organizations. So these started off just a very small number of groups, like 2 or 3, and it gradually grew over the years. And at first, we used to do things very differently. So we had each group would write a whole formal project proposal, apply for grant funding, get there, and have to do all of the project program design and coordination and sampling. And then at the end, they'd have to write a big formal report. And that's kind of how it used to be. But there was a lot more individualization where every group could kind of design their own project, but that also meant that the data wasn't very comparable across groups because everyone was doing a different frequency of sampling, collecting different data. And while this worked in the beginning, as the program grew, it just kind of became unsustainable to do long term. So now we're up to over 30 partner groups. So back in 2020, we decided to shift to a more standardized model. So now everybody is on the same sampling plan. Everyone collects 8 samples throughout the season, and we only monitor set parameters, which we'll talk about shortly. So this made everything much more uniform and standardized, and the data became a lot more reliable and comparable across groups. But it was still really important to keep this as a collaborative, partner-based program. So it's not meant to be a hierarchy, top-down, dictating what all the groups do. We want it to be much more of a back and forth, which is why I've kind of given this kind of conceptual organization of what the program structure looks like on a more of a horizontal. Because we have the DEC on the left, which kind of represents the larger state organization. And the state has identified some umbrella monitoring priorities, along with the help of the watershed planners, who many of you have interacted with, who are very much involved and engaged in their particular basins or watersheds that they are in charge of. And they work with a lot of our partner groups anyway to coordinate different water quality projects. So they also have identified monitoring priorities that they communicate with the partner project coordinators as well. And then you have Benny and I as the LPP coordinators, kind of communicating these overall umbrella priorities and, like I said, setting the standardized sampling plan. And we took on a lot of the logistics and administration of the program. So that's no longer the responsibility quite as much of the project coordinator to log samples and deliver samples. We have now centralized that. So we have groups dropping off their samples at centralized pickup locations. We deliver them to the lab. And we also take care of all the coordination with the lab and logging samples and supplying you with all the supplies you need as well. And then our project coordinators have a unique understanding of their watersheds and offer insight into local water quality concerns through their individual goals and research questions that then fit within the umbrella of the broader state monitoring goals. So the idea is that, like I said, we as the staff set the overall program sampling design, and ensure everything is collected in a standard uniform manner, and then we quality assure and publish the data. And then we also have the partners who then carry out these protocols, orchestrate the specific logistics of their volunteer coordination and training, and then do the sample collection and preservation. And then they're able to address their own monitoring goals by nominating sites that fit within the larger categories set by the LaRosa staff. So myself and Benny or whoever the current AmeriCorps member is. And then some groups choose to recruit volunteers, while some have staff or AmeriCorps members do the collection for them, or just do all the sampling and collection and preservation themselves. So depending on your group, you have freedom to choose and flexibility to choose what model you want to do. And then for volunteers, your first line of contact should be project coordinators. And then those project coordinators are able to contact me or Benny. And this just keeps things a little bit simpler so that Benny and I aren't having to maintain contact with 200 plus people across 30 groups. We can just have one point of contact for each group. And generally speaking, before we get into the rest of the training, this training is meant to be more geared toward project coordinators, but at the same time, there's a lot of relevant information that is important and helpful for volunteers as well, since the vast majority of what we'll cover in this training is how to do the sampling, so how to collect the samples, how to submit flow observations and such. But there will be some things in that we cover in the training that is only necessary for the project coordinator to know. So if you're a volunteer and you're not quite sure if something's your responsibility, please clarify with your project coordinator. And there will be section pauses in between each section for everyone to answer or ask any questions you might have throughout the training. So if you have any questions, that will be the time to ask them. And if you're watching this at home later, feel free to reach out to your project coordinator if you're a volunteer, or if you're a project coordinator, you can reach out to me. Okay, now we're moving into the overall sampling plan. So there are three parameters that we test for. There's total phosphorus, total nitrogen, and chloride. The nutrients, so phosphorus and nitrogen, we have chosen since phosphorus is a widespread concern throughout the Lake Champlain Basin, and nitrogen is more of a concern in the Connecticut River watershed, but it is also a concern anywhere we have agricultural input coming, so it can come from sources like fertilizer or manure, if there's cows or some other livestock. And then we also chose chloride because road salt is becoming an increasing concern, where we're seeing rising levels of salt in our freshwater water bodies. And then lastly, we collect flow observations, which are really important as well, because they provide context for the chemistry data. So the chemistry results can vary quite significantly depending on the recent weather. So if we've had a recent rain or snow melt, it can cause a lot of runoff that can really cause these values to change. So by having flow observations and being able to know if there was a recent weather event, we can put these results into greater context and have more of an idea of why we're seeing these spikes or decreases in certain nutrient or chloride levels. Okay, so the sample plan, generally speaking, you will be collecting 8 total sample events every 2 weeks. We ask that you try to approximately evenly space your sample collections. It doesn't have to be exactly every 2 weeks. If you need to reschedule because someone's on vacation or something like that, that's totally fine. Just try to keep at least a week in between sampling events, so you're not collecting back to back with only a few days in between sample collections. And you can sample on any day of the week between the sample pickups. So we'll have regular sample pickups bi-weekly throughout the season. And as long as you collect some time between the pickups, that'll be fine. And try to keep it consistent, like we said, for each sample period. If you're a group that has a lot of volunteers, you're more than welcome to split the sampling across multiple days. Again, just trying to stay consistent. And the sampling, if you're one of the core LaRosa groups, will start after Monday, April 14th, and it just needs to occur sometime before the first pickup. And the last sample event needs to occur before the last sample pickup on either August 5th or 7th, depending on if your pickup day is Tuesday or Thursday. So this is going to be different. So if you are monitoring lake tributaries, you will not be starting in April. You will be starting in June instead, since you're following the lake's lay monitoring schedule. And you will be doing 6 total sampling events instead of 8. And your pickups will be on different dates as well. So just be aware that this is not, the next slide won't be relevant to you. And Mark Mitchell will be reaching out to you with more information closer to the start of your sampling season. Okay, so here is our sample pickup schedule. We will be starting end of the week of April 7th. We are going to be delivering all of the supplies to each of our groups. And then starting April 14th is when the sampling season will begin. And you can collect your samples anytime before the first pickups, which will be on April 29th and May 1st. So we do our sample pickups along 2 routes. So there's going to be half of the route will be done on Tuesday, the other half will be on Thursday. In the past, we split up the routes into a southwestern route and a northeastern route, so we'll likely keep that the same, although we haven't decided which one will be on which day yet. So we will let you know about that soon. And we will be sharing the overall pickup routes over email when that's finalized. If this schedule doesn't work for you, please let us know as soon as you can so we can adjust and know what to expect. And like I said, the lake sleigh monitoring groups will be following, or the lake tributary groups will be following the lake sleigh monitoring schedule. So this won't be the same for you. It'll be in June, and you will have different dates that you will be dropping off and having your samples picked up. Okay, so this year we're going to be doing something a little bit different. In the past, we have suggested that groups do high flow sampling. So for those who are new, our high flow sampling was when we specifically scheduled sampling to target events when there had been recent rain or heavy runoff due to snowmelt, when the water levels were well above normal in the streams. We are no longer going to be suggesting high flow sampling. We found it was just too logistically complicated for the majority of groups to be able to schedule their sampling last minute to capture a stream after a recent rain. So a lot of times it involved looking at the weather ahead of time and kind of trying to guess when the rain would be heavy enough to create a high flow sample or sampling event, and that was just too complicated. So we decided to simplify this year and say, um, don't worry about that anymore. And we also found that the high flow sampling specifically wasn't really needed because we happened to capture runoff events just throughout the course of the sampling season, especially with all the recent rain we have been getting the past couple summers. That being said, we aren't banning high flow sampling. So if it is still important to your organizational goals and you would like to try to target those high flow events, you can do that. But please just contact me separately. We didn't want to take time to kind of go over it in the training if most people aren't going to be doing it. But if you do want to do it, you can contact me separately and we can make sure that your protocols and the logistics line up still. So the important thing though is that you're only going to be collecting one set of samples between pickups and no more than 8 total sampling events. So we're not doing any kind of extra high flow sampling. We only have enough funds for 8 total sample events per group at every site. All right, so some key takeaways for this section. Most importantly, you're going to be collecting one set of samples. So this is really important that you're only ever collecting one set of samples per biweekly period in between sample pickups on a relatively consistent schedule for 8 total sampling events that will occur from mid-April to early August. And again, the lake tributary groups are going to be following a different schedule that aligns with the lake sleigh monitoring program. So 6 sample events biweekly starting in June. And Mark Mitchell, the coordinator of that program, will be reaching out to you to organize those logistics. Next, please don't skip samples. If you can avoid it, please try to either reschedule or find somebody else to collect your sample. The exception, of course, is if the stream is dry and there's no water flowing in it and you can't collect a sample, or if it's dangerous or not accessible. So again, your well-being and safety always comes first. And then next, please always submit flow observation surveys, even if you don't collect a sample, because we need those flow observations. They're really important to our program to understand the chemistry data. And even if you don't sample, we still want to know why you didn't sample. So if it was dry or it was flooding, or even if you were just on vacation and didn't collect the sample, it makes it easier to track our flow observations if we know the reason why you didn't sample, and we can still see it in our dashboard that that event has been accounted for in some way. Otherwise, we end up with a bunch of missing flow observations, and we can't tell, was a sample actually collected and someone just forgot to submit the survey, or did you just not sample at all? So we can have more clarity if you just always submit a flow observation survey regardless. And we'll be talking about what flow observations are and how to submit them via our Survey 123 survey later in this training. And then lastly, but most importantly, safety is a top priority. So do not sample if it is dangerous or you think it might be dangerous for any reason. So make sure you're checking the weather before you go out to sample. Do not sample if severe weather is predicted or flash flooding is predicted, or if you feel unsafe for any reason. So again, your well-being and safety is most important, and it's just a water sample and it's not more important than your well-being. So Yeah, so keep that in mind, and we'll be talking about later in the training as well, some safety tips and things to keep in mind before you go out sampling. All right, do we have any questions so far?
There was a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Thursdays are the day volunteers have to have the samples in, or Thursdays is when the samples are being picked up for testing?
That's a good question. So Thursday is the day that Thursday or Tuesday, depending on your group, we haven't decided that yet, so we'll let you know, is going to either be Tuesday or Thursday. And depending on where, so we'll be coming around picking up your sample. So your sample will need to be at your drop-off location. So wherever that is, for some groups, it's somebody's house. So if I might be, or I guess it's not me and Benny, but it'll be wherever your drop-off location is. If it happens to be your house, then you're all set. But if you're somebody who's getting it to a more central pickup location, because we have a lot of groups in your area, then it'll need to be there by that Tuesday or Thursday. Any other questions? Yeah, no questions in the room? Okay.
Right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about field sampling. So this is the LaRosa Program Partnership Guide. This resource should be able to answer most of the questions that you'll have throughout the season. It's about 50 pages long. It has a very thorough table of contents. So you don't necessarily need to read every single page. If you just have a specific question, you should be able to find the specific page you're looking for and get your question answered there. This can be found on our website. So if we can.
Yeah.
This can be found on the LaRosa program website. The way that I most frequently get to this website is by Googling LaRosa program DEC and going to the first link. Once you've gotten to it, you can like bookmark the URL. It's not super complicated. I just don't have it memorized. It's like complicated enough that it's hard to memorize. But
yeah, I think it's like vermont.gov/monitoring/LaRosa. So it's nothing too complicated.
And so the partner guide is in this quick links section that I will probably reference again as like the second link down under frequently asked questions. And it's just a pretty good resource for you all to know about. We'll answer a lot of your questions about sampling. There are also additional training materials in this trainings and protocols section. This is like a little square. You go into it and this is what it'll look like. There's some videos. There's a video on nitrogen acidification. There's a video on data access. There's a video on survey 123, or there's like resources for survey 123. So again, if you, at the end of this training, you're like, what, I still have questions. I forgot to ask them. Where can I go? You can go to the website, look for the partner guide, look for trainings and additional information, and that should help you. So now we're going to go over sampling supplies. You will have bottles and pre-printed labels. So Megan's holding up the bottles and the labels now. So we're going to be dropping off these supplies, and we're going to have supplies for all the groups that we're dropping off, like in the truck that day. And it's important that you take your bottles and your labels. Otherwise, it'll get very confusing very quickly, and groups will not have what they need. And it's just really important that we all double check to make sure we're getting the supplies that belong to us.
And all of the supplies too, because we try to keep it all in one bag or box, but the river dippers are awkward and large. So if you requested a river dipper, make sure you do that. I see there's a hand up. Someone have a question? No,
Yeah.
okay.
Just give me a question.
I think so.
Yeah. So we'll also have sample racks.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
it was
okay.
inadvertent.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Sample racks. And this is like where the samples can be stored. It's important to keep your samples in order. So you'll have the label will have numbers. And this will make a little bit more sense in a second, but if you can keep them in the right order, that'll be really helpful for us instead of having to order like a bunch
200.
of 200
Yeah.
samples when they all come back to us, you all will order however many you do, and then we'll just double check. It's just really helpful.
Yeah. Because we have to check if samples are missing and things like that, and it's just so much faster if it's all in order, and we can just run through the field sheet and run through your bottles in front of us if they're in order.
We'll also include a field sheet, a veil field sheet, which is what the lab needs to process your samples. It's important that you have one and that you fill it out and you return it to us. Otherwise, can't really do much. You'll also have a nitrogen acidification kit. So that'll have gloves, goggles, and acid. And you'll use that to acidify samples. Talk more about that later. And you'll have a sampling checklist. That should be another resource to you or your partners or your volunteers, whomever, on the day of sampling to make sure that you have everything that you need and you're prepared to go. We'll also have river dippers. That's what they look like. They're pretty, more or less pretty straightforward to use. But if you requested a river dipper, make sure you take one. If you requested one and you realize that you actually have what you need, please let us know. We had to order more. I think we had 30.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
30 last year, and then we had 15 when we were looking this year. So it's important that they come back to us and we know where they end up.
Yeah. If you kept them, that's fine. Just let us know so we aren't ordering more and then having to keep ordering more and have them disappear on us. So we should have enough this year, hopefully. If we need to order more, we will. So if you realize you actually do want a river dipper, they're really helpful if you're sampling in like a deep river. It just extends your reach a little bit farther so you can get more in the center of the stream rather than just on the bank. Yeah, just let us know and hopefully we have enough.
So this is what the different sample bottle looks like. It's really important that you know what is being tested for in which bottle so that you can put the label on the right bottle. The green is chloride with the green lid. The blue lid is nitrogen. And the glass with the black line on it is phosphorus. And that is not going to change. It'll always be that way. And you will have a label that will say chloride, nitrogen, or phosphorus. And you're going to want to stick that label to that bottle. Yeah, so just make sure to do that. Yeah, so the phosphorus tubes have like a black line on them. That's where they should be filled to. It's really important that they're filled to that line and not higher or not lower. And Megan will go over like sampling procedure and what happens if you do fill it higher or do fill it lower, like how to fix that problem. But that black line is really important to note. The chloride and nitrogen bottles should be filled to the 50 milliliter line, which is pretty close to the top. It's not like a random line in the middle, so it's a little bit easier to think about. This is a little bit more about the labels. So you want to apply the labels to the bottles before you go out into the field. Preferably this happens inside where it's like completely dry. You can just stick the label on before you go. You want the bottles to be completely dry because it's like a sticker, and so it won't stick if the bottle's wet. You want the labels to be placed vertically, just like in this picture. That's important because if they're wrapped around horizontally, the scanner won't be able to read the barcode. And then we can't like scan them in properly. And for total phosphorus, like the glass bottle with the black line, you want it to place that label below the black line so that we can all still see that line. This is like a zoomed in picture of what the labels look like. So they'll have the parameter on them. So it'll say chloride or nitrogen or phosphorus. And then it will, on the next slide, it has the LaRosa site ID. So whatever name you've given your site will be on the bottle. So you're going to want to make sure that the bottle that is at that site has the name of the site. It will get very confusing if we start like mixing up site names.
Yeah, and we've had this happen in the past where, especially if the site names are kind of similar, like LP1 and LP2, if you accidentally grab LP2 when you go to sample, then the data will be misassigned to LP2, not LP1. So we do have a QC check for this in the survey 123, but just make sure you're also double checking it.
We also have the location ID. This is one of the things that we use in the database for the samples. So this number will also be on the labels. And in between the location ID and the LaRosa like site name is the letter R or the letter D. The R will stand for regular, so it's a regular sample, and the D will stand for duplicate, so it'd be a duplicate sample. That's pretty straightforward. We'll talk more about duplicates later. At the bottom, this bold number is the Vail sample ID. This is a pretty important number. This year, it will start with 25 because it's 2025. And then have like 5 digits after that. And then it has like a 0-001-002. And that refers to the order on the field sheet.
Yeah.
So this.
So it'll be like the first one will be -001, then -002, and so on. So you know what order to expect your sites as you're adding in the sample collection information.
So yeah, can we go on to the next one so I can?
You want to go back?
I want to go forward.
Oh, forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is what the field sheet will look like. And the Vail sample ID, that bold number on the bottom of the label, is also has to match the order ID on the top.
Yeah, so this is the bolded one on the label, and then this is where you'll find it on the field sheet, and those need to match like Benny was saying.
It's also in every order on the field sheet. So like this section, and then there's a new site here. For every site, it will also have the Vail ID at the top of that new site section. I don't know.
Yeah, and each site will have a unique ID, so it'll be the order number -001-002, and the order will stay mostly the same except for the last ones, which will be duplicates, which will change every week. So because those duplicates change every event, that's why it's really important that your label order number matches the field sheet order number, because especially with the duplicates, it might actually be an entirely different site. So we'd be receiving a label that says SB 2.5, but then if the field sheet says a different duplicate site like LP1, then we don't know which one's correct. Is it the field sheet correct? Is the label correct? So just make sure if you're a project coordinator that all of the samples you're receiving from your volunteers, all the labels have matching order IDs. And if you're a volunteer, make sure you're not just grabbing a random bottle. You're picking the one that's designated for whatever sample event it is. And we'll write on the top of the field sheet, sample event 1, or sample event 2, like in this one. And that just refers to like the first sample period, all the samples collected between the first and the second pickup, or all the samples collected between the second and the third pickup.
There are some, I see a raised hand. Do we have a question?
Oh.
Yeah, if you did raise your hand with a question, you can unmute and just ask.
Jan, did you have a question?
I think I think I had a question too.
Okay.
I came a little late, but I take it we're not using the apps to record. We're using paper sheets this year.
No, you are still using the app, but every group does it a little bit differently. So it's possible that maybe your group might have just had you do the app and then they got the information in a different way. So this is what the project coordinator needs to submit to the lab with the samples. So yeah, so the project coordinator needs to submit the Vail sheet. It's possible the volunteers might actually never see this sheet. And we'll talk more about that, but good question.
Thank you.
Megan, I unmuted now. I'm sorry. This
okay.
may be too specific, but
Go
I'm
ahead.
a little fuzzy about the structure of all of it. I'm from Lake Bomazene and but working under Pulteney Medowee, and then there's another group of people that does Lake St. Catherine working under Pulteney Medowee. And last year, one of the slightly confusing things for us was that on some of our sample sheets we had sites from both places, and I'm just wondering if the sites, if it's already a done deal on the field sheets, or whether they could be separated because they're two separate lakes.
Yeah, it isn't a done deal yet. So we haven't logged the samples yet. So yeah, we can do that for you. And yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because in your situation, yeah, you're kind of like a conglomeration of multiple groups. So yeah,
Yeah.
we can touch base about which site should be on a separate order.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
And I know there's some questions in the chat. I think we can come back to those at the end of the section. Just a little bit more about the field sheet. So there are some sections that need to be filled in by the project coordinator. So we have the date and time collected. This is like maybe the most critical box on this field sheet. The date should be accurate and the time with an AM or PM designation. Because 7 AM is a reasonable time to sample, so is 7 PM. There's no way for us to know when we get that sheet back when you chose to sample. So make sure date and time with the AM or PM attached.
And it's critical because the lab won't accept your sample if it doesn't have this. So what happens if we do receive samples without a date or a time is we have to hold on to them until we can figure out what the date and time is, because Kelly from sample receiving, who will be coming later, just won't take the samples. It's part of their protocol. And then we'll have to kind of email around until we can get that date and time. So to save everyone time, just make sure those are written in for all of your samples. If for some reason you're missing a date or a time and you're working on it, just, you can write that in, like we'll get you the date and time. Because I know that does happen sometimes when you're coordinating a lot of volunteers.
We also have a spot for collected by, so like the sampler name and any relevant comments. So if your total phosphorus bottle was accidentally rinsed, you can just write that in the comments. We'll talk more about actual sampling protocol and whether or not you should rinse the TP bottle. But there's a space for that. You do. We also have this section where it's filtered or acidified. So total nitrogen always needs to be acidified. So you're going to want to circle yes for every sample. Or you can write at the top that all of your nitrogens were acidified, but that's the best way just to ensure that we know it's acidified, that you remember to do that part. Otherwise, there's no way for like Megan or I to know if the samples were acidified because we're just looking at them. Yep, always fill out the data. So if a site is not sampled, so for any reason, if within that 2-week sample period, you weren't able to make it to a site, you didn't collect any water there, the site was dry, the volunteer was out, it was unsafe to sample, what you're going to want to do is put a big X over that section on the field sheet and write delete. You need to both cross it off and write delete. It's another thing that's part of the lab like protocol. If you don't cross it off or write delete, then we might have to reach out to you and say, did you mean to cross this off or did you mean to write delete? So you need to do both so that we know.
And writing like stream was dry isn't good enough because the lab is not allowed to make any assumptions. So they can only take it very literally. So it has to say delete. Because if it says dry, they assume that means you didn't collect a sample, but that they're not supposed to make any assumptions.
Yeah. If you go to your site and you're able to take 2 of your samples, but you're not able to take 1 of them for whatever reason, you can cross that test off in this bottom like test section of the field sheet, and also write delete. Again, you have to both cross it off and write delete for whichever samples that applies to that you weren't able to collect. And then you can write in a comment, the bottle was broken or it leaked everywhere, just so we know why you weren't able to collect that sample, which is helpful. But most importantly, cross it off, write delete, and then we can follow up with you if we need to. Any questions? I know there were a few in the chat. Are there any in the room?
Notice that you put NA for the phosphorus sample. Is it better to use that than the typical circling no for not filtered?
That's fine. That is less of an important thing. So the main thing is just writing that they were acidified to like acknowledge it was acidified. So I know they have it for every test, but I don't think we're not going to make you like circle it for every single one.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's Joanne. My memory is not too clear, but it seemed like last year, I would do the time by my phone when I was, entering the data right at the site.
Mhm.
And that it seemed like on a couple of them, it didn't give the right time.
So
And
if
I
you
don't know if it's because we were out of, like my phone wasn't working or what was this story.
I think what it could be is so the way the survey 123 works is the minute that you open the survey, it records the time. So if you happen to open the survey 123 at a different time and then came back to it, then that would have recorded a different time. So that's my best guess. The other possibility is I don't know if you were looking at the survey itself or if you were looking in the flow data dashboard. Because if you're looking in the flow data dashboard, it annoyingly doesn't say the time. It says the last edit time of that. So if for some reason someone went in or edited later, it's the survey 123. It works really great for getting us the data, but for you all in the dashboard, it doesn't necessarily show all the information. So if you're ever
Okay.
unsure about a time and you want us to go back and double check our records, if you're using the app, it does save what you've submitted, so you should be able to go back and look at what you've submitted to, but and edit it also. But if you're using the browser version, which this is confusing now, but we'll distinguish between the browser version and the app version. The browser version just autofills whatever time you're completing the survey, and it just disappears, and you can't edit it. So
Okay.
yeah, and I know that's confusing. We'll explain it a bit more when we get to the survey 123 section.
Okay, thanks.
Jan, did you have a question?
Yes, I work with Joanne, so this is just related to that. Is it real? What would happen is Joanne often did the phone while I did the survey, the paper sheet, and what should the times match on the two? That was my concern. Is like what we knew the phone was wrong, but then we didn't know if it was going to get thrown out because the sheet didn't match the phone. And which one should we go with?
That's a great question. Go with the one you on the field sheet, on the paper sheet, go with what you know is correct. You
Okay.
don't have to worry about it being thrown out because we have checks for this. So when I go through and using code, I pair all of the flow observations to the chemistry. And if there's a mismatch, I know there's a mismatch and I can go in and look at it and then I can investigate and be like, oh, which one seems more correct? And I use my best judgment based on, and I usually err on the side of what's on the sheet. So I usually go for what's on the sheet unless I have seen like something that I knew was an obvious mistake. So because yeah, so I always check for that. So you
Okay.
won't have any missing stuff. And in the database, the time doesn't really matter. It still shows up under your organization. So it's not really important for the database. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
There's some questions in the chat.
Yeah, let's ask those.
So just a question about the meniscus. This came up when talking about TP.
Yeah. I probably will mention, filling with the meniscus, which is the kind of when water sticks to the side with capillary action and it kind of creates like almost like a U-shaped, the water doesn't just lie flat in the glass. So you want to sample with the bottom of the meniscus above or at the black line. But we can talk more about that when we get to that section.
And then there's a question about the 2024 chemistry data being published.
When will it? Yeah, so great question about the 2024 data. Betty and I are still working on quality assuring it. And we'll talk about this later, but the process can get significantly delayed when we're tracking down missing flow observations. So that took a really long time this past late summer and fall. And we're still working on going through the chemistry, and we have to go throughout the chemistry and all the flow too. So we're working on that. We're trying to speed up the process. So we don't have an exact date in mind because right now I'm in full prepping for the season start mode. So once the season starts in April, I'll be able to return my attention to quality assurance and kind of get back to that. And then it's also dependent on other people. It's dependent on our database manager and when he has time to process the data on his end, which usually doesn't take that long, but if he's really busy, it might delay it by a week or two. So we'll reach out when the 2024 data is finalized. If you need your data sooner, I can give you an unquality assured version that you can look at and use. We just ask that you don't share it externally until we finalize the data set. Are there any other questions?
Sounds good.
All right, let me return to the PowerPoint. Oh, all right, so next section, we're going to be talking about sample collection protocols. So this is really important. You have been given, or project coordinators have been given specified coordinates for each of the site. We ask that you sample at these coordinates, give or take a couple 100 feet. So we're not that worried about it. If you happen to be like 50 feet from where your coordinates are, that's okay. Sometimes the coordinates are a little bit off too. But this is especially important if you're sampling a wastewater treatment facility site, because those coordinates are specifically above the discharge of the wastewater facility. And if you're accidentally sampling below the discharge, then we're going to get bad data. This is also important for making sure that past data is comparable with future data. Again, it's not a big deal if it's within a couple 100 feet different, but if you're on the other side of a road than you normally were, or in the past, or on the other side of a tributary coming in, that can mess up the data. So just be aware that you're sampling as close as possible to the specified coordinates, or at least where you know the site is supposed to be sampled.
Or from a dam should be.
That's a good question. If there's a beaver dam, we might want to look into moving the site altogether. If it's a man-made dam, I think it's okay.
Because one of
Yeah.
our sample sites is below.
Is
the
it?
Horseshoe Dam.
I think we looked at that and that was fine. Yeah, so I think you're okay with that one. So once you get to your site, you will have kind of, a stretch of river in front of you. So you want to try to sample where the flow is strong, where it's not pooling or kind of eddying in a weird way, because that could cause the water to mix weirdly. So make sure the flow is strong. You don't want to be too near a tributary or a dam. That could be a man-made or a beaver dam, but I don't think anyone is that close to a man-made dam because you usually can't get that close to them. And the one exception to being close to a tributary is if you're specifically sampling above or below a tributary, and that's the purpose of your monitoring, then obviously you're going to want to be near it. If you're downstream of the tributary coming in, like you're sampling below the confluence of the Dog River with the Winooski River, you want to make sure you've left enough room for there to be mixing. So that's usually like 200 feet down from where the tributary enters. And then try to pick a spot that is relatively easy to find again. So if you have like a rock or a tree that you can use to recognize it, then that's helpful to find that spot again. But again, we're just trying to get within a couple 100 feet. So it's not a big deal. If you sampled 5 feet over from where you did last time, that's okay. If you do need to move a sample site, which this does happen on occasion for a variety of reasons, it could be a landowner revoked permission, you don't feel safe at that site anymore, beavers came in and built a dam, you are having a lot of backflow at your site from a larger water body, so like it's right near where the river meets the lake, or right near where a smaller tributary meets a bigger river, and you keep having that bigger river or lake backing up. These are all reasons we might want to move a site. If you need to move it right in that moment, make sure you're making a note and recording your new location, either directions or ideally coordinates with like a map, like a GPS map app or something. But the big thing is, regardless, contact LPP staff. And again, this is only if you're moving it like significantly, like more than 400, 500 feet. Or if you're moving it to the other side of a tributary or a road kind of coming in, because that we might want to make a brand new site in the database, so we're not comparing kind of apples to oranges if it's two different sites with different water chemistry. All right, so you've made it to the stream. Now you're ready to collect your samples. You're going to wade into the center of stream flow. And by center, I don't mean like the literal center of the stream. I just mean where the strongest flow is happening. And you're going to wait for any disturbed sediment to flow downstream, especially because if you're walking in, it's a mucky bottom. It might kind of kind of pond out around you. So if you have a really mucky stream that's slow moving, you might want to consider using a river dipper so you're not disturbing the sediment. Make sure you're always facing upstream. Then the next step is going to be rinsing your bottles. So if it's a plastic bottle, so either the blue capped TN bottle or the green cap CL, you're going to rinse it with river water first. So uncap it, kind of swish it in the water, give it a couple shakes, dump the rinsing water behind you, and do that for 3 total times for just the plastic ones. For the glass ones, you don't want to rinse. So just go ahead and take the cap off and dip it directly into water and fill it up. And then when you're dipping your bottles, you want to do it approximately midway between the bottom of the stream and the surface in a U-shaped motion. So this is what I'm talking about. Again, you want to do this facing upstream against the flow. And the big thing here is make sure at the bottom of your dip, you're not hitting the bottom of the stream. Because if you hit, especially in a mucky sediment, you might end up with sediment in your sample and that contaminates the sample. And it causes, especially the phosphorus values, to be artificially high. So whenever, this is a lot of what I'm looking for when I'm quality assuring the data. If I all of a sudden see a site when there was no rain, there's like a phosphorus value of like 500 and it's normally 20, then that to me says that there was probably sediment that got into the stream, into the sample. So just be aware of that. If you do, this is helpful with TP. So you're going to want to pour it to, or fill it to the required volume. You can kind of see on here in this photo that the meniscus is kind of, see, do I have my, yeah, my laser. So the water kind of makes like a U shape like this. So you want the bottom of the U to be above that black line. Last year we had a issue where a lot of people were filling these tubes all the way to the top. We don't want that. We just want the tubes filled to the black line as close as possible. And definitely not below the black line because that's not enough sample. If you accidentally overfill a TP, instead of just kind of pouring it out like this, it's really hard to do that without overpouring. The best is like a little flick, and that helps you get like a controlled amount of water out. If you accidentally do overpour off the sample though, that's okay. You can take the cap and you can fill it up and use that to pour into the bottle instead.
You had a clean pipette.
You could do that if you had a pipette, but I think most people don't, so it's not a big deal to just use the cap. This is also just out of an abundance of caution. Oh, another thing, make sure you're not touching the inside of the bottle or the cap with your fingers. We had an incident several years ago with a former colleague who he didn't get fired for this, he retired. But he was eating chips and he touched the bottle and it ended up creating a really high salt value. So just be aware of that. Yeah, I think most of the time your fingers probably have washed off in the stream water, so I don't know how that happened. There's that black fill line for the TP bottle, and then here's the 50 milliliter line for the TN and the chloride. This is not as critical because it just needs to be approximately filled to the top, but not all the way to the top because we want to leave a tiny bit of headspace for acidification.
This is different in class.
Yeah, probably is. I don't pay attention, like I said. Yeah, with this one, they take the sample out of the bottle and they usually actually don't need the full 50 liters. They need like 10 and then they have you collect extra. So this one is just more like fill the bottle up. It's just the phosphorus is really critical. It's at the black line because they actually do their processing right in the bottle. And again, just mentioning that if you need to redo a sample, if it's a plastic tube one, it doesn't matter the reason, if you overfilled it, if you don't like how you sampled it, if you disturbed the bottom sediment, just go ahead, redo it. It's like an extra rinse. It's not a big deal. With the phosphorus one, the only reason you're going to redo it is if it's contaminated. So regardless, contamination is always a problem. So always redo your sample if you notice that there's like chunks of mud in your sample. That being said, if it's raining out or there was a recent rain or you have a pollution source nearby, you might have really muddy water that's like uniformly brown all the way through. That's okay. If the entire stream is brown and it's all in the water column too. So I'm just talking about like sediment that you disturbed as you were sampling. And then lastly, at risk of sounding like too much of a cat person, please keep your dogs out of the stream while you're sampling. I've noticed a couple of flow photos when I'm quality assuring of dogs in the stream. If it's after you're sampling, that not a problem. But if it's during the sampling, it makes me nervous that maybe they're stirring up sediment nearby. So just try to keep them out of the stream. And I just wanted to clarify that they can definitely disturb sediment, especially if they're upstream of you. So. All right, so here are a couple situations where you would not collect a sample. So if your stream is dry, obviously you can't collect a sample. There's no water in it. If it is a stagnant puddle, so I don't mean like it's moving so slowly that you can't see it, but there's like 4 feet of water and it's clearly a river. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like it's a disconnected puddle. So I'll show you a photo in the next slide. Don't sample if the water level is so low you can't sample without disturbing sediment. So like if your water looks like this picture here, don't collect a sample. I don't think you could do that without disturbing it. If it's a rock bottom stream, so it's like a hard bottom, you might be able to get away with sampling when it's that shallow. But if it's sedimenty, don't collect a sample. If the flows are too swift or too deep to sample safely, don't collect a sample, unless, of course, you have a river dipper and can safely sample from the shore. And then don't collect a sample if the flow is backing up from a larger water body. So again, this happens a lot in the spring where the lakes are really high level and some tributaries to those lakes, or sometimes it's like I've seen this happen at the confluence of the Lemon Fair River and the Otter Creek, where you can actually see the Otter Creek is just like completely flowing up into the Lemon Fair and like flooding that whole area. So if you're experiencing that, you can move your site to try to get up above the backflow. But if you can't get above the backflow because everything's just kind of the same elevation level, then just don't collect a sample. And the reason why is because that lake or that larger river is diluting your sample, so it's not really showing us conditions in that actual stream. So this is what I'm talking about, where it's like a disconnected puddle. So up the photo on the left is the upstream, the photo on the right is the downstream. So you can see that like rock shelf is like completely dry. And then maybe there's like a trickle of water going around. But for the most part, it's just a dry stream bed. So don't sample here. However, do sample in this scenario where see how the water looks like it's stagnant. So it's like not really moving, but it's definitely flowing through that culvert. It's continuing on past that. So it might just be backed up a bit from like sometimes culverts get blocked a bit. In this scenario, it'd probably be better to sample downstream, but use your best judgment and sample where the flow seems strongest and doesn't seem to be backing up.
We will raise hand.
Yeah.
Just real quick, could you go back to the don't sample?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm grabbing screenshots real quick.
Oh, good. Yeah, no worries.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry to.
Got it. No, you're good. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. If you're using a river dipper, there's a little bit extra protocols. So you're gonna want to store your river dipper with a plastic bag over the top so it doesn't get like dusty or something. And then you're also going to want to rinse the river dipper bottle 3 times with river water at each site. So each time you go to a new site, rinse it 3 times, and then use the water to rinse your sample bottles also. Oh yeah, we've got, for our people online, here's our river dipper in a nice Ziploc bag over the top. And you're gonna sample in the same U-shaped motion facing upstream. And then you're going to use the water in the river dipper to rinse your bottles 3 times if it requires rinsing. So plastic bottles are rinsed, glass are not. And you can refill the river dipper container as needed. And make sure you are filling to the designated fill line. Another reminder, rinse the plastic bottles with green or blue caps 3 times. Do not rinse glass bottles. Any questions?
There was one in the chat I don't think we touched on. Do we rinse the caps?
Yes. Oh yeah, thank you. I like to just kind of put the cap and like give it a shake with the cap on, but yes, make sure the caps get rinsed too.
A raised hand.
Yep. Jan?
Yes, I'm sorry, it's me again.
No.
I'm pondering a site that we have. It's a culvert that goes under, it's by a golf course, so it seems important. It goes under a road and then
Yep.
into the lake. And the lake has, the wind flows south towards that culvert. So there's a lot
Mhm.
of debris that gathers there, and sometimes it's like just vegetation and sometimes it's trash. There's very
Mhm.
little flow. I mean, we can see flow coming out of the culvert, but then, I don't know how to determine when it's like just backed up lake water. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. I have seen that before where the wind blows just the surface of the water. So it looks like it might be backflowing, but it's actually not. One way you can check is you can like throw a leaf into the stream and see which way it's flowing. If it's not really moving, I wouldn't worry about it. So I'm talking more like when you can see a clear backflow, like I've seen
okay.
that.
And
Yeah, but actually we could probably look at your specific site. What is the name of your site
oh
that you're
boy,
talking about?
I think it was LB01, but I'm not sure. Somebody else,
Okay.
maybe Lynn or Joanne can weigh in. The other I mean, part of my concern was what about the trash that if is trash going to be important data or skewing data if there's
Hmm.
clearly stuff in there that doesn't belong?
That's a good question. I think definitely you wouldn't want to like try to get the trash in your sample.
Right.
That's kind of just gross. Uh, I
And
think
we will,
if that's what is at the site, that's what's at the site. The
okay,
parameters we're looking for probably like chloride, that's coming from road salts, not coming from trash. Phosphorus and nitrogen comes from agriculture runoff, and phosphorus can come from a variety of sources, but usually not like we're not looking for like metals or toxins, like things like that. So
right.
I don't think it'll impact
Okay,
anything.
so we
So
should take the sample there when we see a little bit of flow coming out the culvert. That's really
yep.
mainly what
Yeah, as long as
okay,
it's flowing through the culvert. Yeah. So and you can tell like we'll show a photo later on where you can see like the water isn't really coming out the side of the bottom of the culvert. So that would be an example of not to sample if it's not actually crossing through the culvert.
okay. Thank you.
Great questions. Yeah, this is helpful. There's a lot of specific scenarios you might encounter. So if you're not sure, always take a sample and then let us know. Write it in the comments, write it in your survey. Follow up with either your project coordinator or they'll follow up with me, and we can always figure out what to do based on the scenario.
Put a picture or a short video.
Yeah, pictures help a lot. So in the survey 123, there's a way to take photos, which is why I have all these photos. So yeah, and a video would be even better because we can get a sense of it. So yeah, that would be great.
Megan, that site is LBO1.
LBO1.
And
Okay, so we can
yeah,
look at it. If
yeah,
we have
'cause
time, maybe
it
at the end.
also is not upstream. It's, it's downstream and we really couldn't
Okay.
see. It doesn't seem like it seems like we should be sampling on the other part of the road, the other
Okay.
part of the property.
We can take a look at it. I can pull up the pictures from your survey 123 if we have time at the end. So
Okay, right.
yeah.
Thanks.
We do have a
Thank
question in
you.
the chat.
Oh, a question in the chat. Yes.
Isn't rinsing the river 3 times affecting the TP reading?
It is not, because I think so we were actually, I don't want to confuse people, but I'm not actually that worried about phosphorus sticking to the containers. I think in the past we were worried about it with glass specifically. That being said, I was talking to the chemists and they're like, our readings, our instruments probably couldn't detect that, but we're gonna just stick with our rinsing protocols as is, just because we've been doing it this way for years. And but yeah, the main message is, try not to rinse the TP tubes, rinse the plastic ones. Don't worry too much about it, is the bottom line. All right, so we're gonna do a little quiz. And we're gonna have people put your answers in the chat and we'll see if you're correct. So, and we'll talk about it if we're wrong. Don't worry, you won't be flunked out of LaRosa school. So, So all parameters can be sampled using the same bottles. We're getting thumbs down in the room here. True or false? Do you have it in the chat? No, no, yep, false.
False.
Yes, correct. False. So like we said, glass bottles for TP, blue capped for nitrogen, and green capped for chloride. Always face upstream when sampling. True or false? Got some
Thumbs up here.
thumbs up, hearing trues.
Seeing trues in the chat.
T's, yep. So correct. True. Always face upstream. Total phosphorus bottles must be rinsed 3 times. Thumbs down. Yeah. False. All right. You should dump sample rinsing water downstream. So that means like whatever was in your bottle as you were rinsing.
Seeing some trues in the chat and
Yep.
seeing some thumbs up in the room.
True. Yes. So make sure it's going behind you so it's not disturbing what's in front of you. All right, so here's like a scenario. So you accidentally get some sediment from the stream bed in a TN sample, so a nitrogen sample. You should leave the sample as is and make a note on the field sheet. Getting thumbs down here.
Thumbs down in the room.
Chat says no.
False, no, false, great.
Yes, false. So for TN, you should dump out the sample and retake it. It's essentially an extra rinse, so you don't really need to make a note. For TP, you would also still redo the sample. So if you get sediment in your sample, always redo it. For TP, you can make a note. It probably won't impact the data, but you can still make a note. But the main thing is just redo the sample if you noticed you got sediment in it. You can move a site if it isn't in a good location.
Seeing thumbs up in the room, some trues in the chat.
True. The main thing is contact us though if you're moving it far.
Someone says within 500 feet.
Yes, within 500 feet. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so the 500 feet is coming from we create a new site if it's 0.1 miles away, which equates to roughly 500 feet. So that's where that's coming from. That isn't true if it's on the opposite side of a tributary, because that can influence the data within 500 feet. So yeah, so you are welcome to move a site. Don't just like do it for no reason, obviously. So like you should have a reason for it. And unless of course you're moving it like 2 feet, that's fine. I don't care. But if you're moving it in a significant distance, then let us know. Never sample near a confluence with a larger water body. I'm seeing like this.
Yeses in the middle. Online I see true, false.
All right, so this one is a little bit of a tricky question. Technically false, so I'm not saying never sampled near a larger confluence, but it depends on if there's backflow. So if there is backflow, don't collect a sample. If there isn't backflow, then you're okay. So if it's happening a lot and you're seeing backflow, then we probably will move the site. So that would be an example of contact us. All right, and last question, tributaries don't affect the water quality downstream in the receiving waters.
Seeing thumbs down in the room.
Yeah. And that is
false in the chat.
False, yeah. So this is because the tributaries could be bringing in cleaner water that's kind of diluting things in the receiving water, or it could be bringing in more polluted water, and especially right near where the tributary comes in and where the water isn't fully mixed. So that's kind of going back to don't move a site to the other side of a tributary without letting us know. And if you are purposely sampling downstream of a tributary confluence, then make sure you're leaving room for it to mix where you're sampling, so a couple 100 feet. It kind of depends on the size of the stream that's coming in and the size of the receiving stream, but generally I think 200 feet is kind of like the go-to. All right, I think this is our last page. So bottle dippers, so river dippers, or buckets if you happen to be using a bucket. I don't think we have anyone using a bucket. Must be rinsed 3 times before sampling.
Seeing thumbs up in the room. And true in the chat.
Yep, so that is correct. If you pour off a TP sample below the fill line, you must redo the whole sample.
Seeing thumbs down in the room and false in the chat.
Correct. So you don't want to redo it. You just want to take the cap and fill it up to the line. And the labels attached to the sample bottles are the same for every sample event and are completely interchangeable.
Seeing thumbs down.
Strong
no,
thumb
no
down,
room.
thumbs down. Yeah, correct.
Both in the chat. Great job.
So the labels must match what's on the field sheet. So just a reminder. Oh, and also the parameters aren't interchangeable either. So make sure the correct label is on the correct bottle type and make sure these numbers are matching what's on the field sheet. Great. You guys are doing great.
So we're going to do, I think, one more section, then we'll be
Yes.
into a break.
Yeah.
So this is the QA/QC section. We're going to talk about site visits and field duplicates. So for site visits, this is when Megan and I come to your site and go sample with you. So we're there to review sample protocol, go over field sheets, look at your flow observations and sample preservation, just kind of see how you do what you do, and make sure that it matches like the state standards. This is helpful for us to get to know the partners and their sites and see how people do it. It's also an opportunity for us to provide any assistance or feedback and also receive any feedback that you all might have for us. We'll also always be taking additional samples for data or for quality control. We won't be able to make it to every site because there are so many of you and 2 of us. We will prioritize going to sites with brand new samplers, brand new project coordinators, and then groups that have not been visited in the past couple of years.
And also groups with wastewater sites because we have to take extra samples at those, like heavy metals and like test for things like that too.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about field duplicates. So for a field duplicate, you're going to want to sample immediately after your regular sample using the same procedure, including rinsing. So if you rinse your regular sample 3 times, you also want to rinse your duplicate sample 3 times. If you use a river dipper for your regular sample, you're going to want to use a river dipper for your duplicate sample.
And
also
rinse it. Yeah. So that's the one exception where you will have to re-rinse the river dipper in between your duplicates, just because we're trying to replicate the protocols exactly.
And these duplicates are used to identify issues within sample collection, including contamination. So if we see contamination in both your regular sample and your duplicate, then we know there's a problem there. Some other like discrepancies in data can point us in other directions of where the problem might be. 10% of all samples are duplicates, and those are pre-assigned by LPP staff, by LaRosa staff, and they will be highlighted in yellow on the veil field sheet and on the label as well. And they cannot be skipped. So if you have one, please do it at your assigned site during the assigned sample event. It'll always have that little D on the label and on the field sheet so that you know that there's a duplicate that needs to be taken. It's also always the last site on the veil order. Questions in the room, in the chat?
So does everybody get one at some point?
Yeah, everyone should get one at some point. It'll be, many groups will get more than one. So unless like your group, you're only sampling 2 sites, so you probably will get 2 throughout the course of the season or maybe even fewer. So, and you'll know it's a duplicate because like we said, it's highlighted, and which site to take it at will just be on the label. So you'll have your regular sample for that site and then make sure you also have the duplicate. If for some reason you do need to take a duplicate at a different site, make sure you're letting us know and writing it on the field sheet. All right, we'll do, actually, I think we're gonna skip this review because we're running a little behind. I'll go through really quickly. So field duplicate bottles should be collected immediately after. When sampling field duplicates with a river dipper, the dipper collection container should be rinsed 6 total times, which is confusing. I know it's 3, but it's 3 before your regular sample at the beginning and then 3 before your duplicate. So 6 total. Field duplicates can be taken at any site. False. We want those just to be taken at the assigned site if possible, just because it can get confusing where the duplicate actually was taken. And like Benny was saying, your duplicate should come out relatively more or less the same. Like there is some field variation in the stream, but if they're coming out completely different, then that's how we identify there's something wrong going on. All right. Any other questions before we take a break? All right, so we're gonna take a 10-minute break. So if people want to be back here at 2:30. All right, so we're gonna get started again. So now we're going to talk about flow observations. So flow observations are a key piece of data that we need to have with all the chemistry values also, because our values can change a lot during or after a rain event or snowmelt. So it helps us interpret the chemistry data better. And the way we collect these flow observations are through the Survey 123 app or survey in the browser. So we'll talk about that in the next section. There's three different types of, well, two types of flow observations. There's flow level and flow type. And then we also ask a question about visible turbidity. I think we will also add a question that's just about, has there been recent rain? Because we've noticed some issues with the flow type not always being correct. So we just be aware we might add that also. So when we're talking about flow level, keep in mind that we're not just talking about like how high up on the bank the water is. We're talking about how much water, the rate of water flowing. So for math nerds, the discharge or flow is an actual mathematical calculation. It's equal to the amount of volume of water flowing over a given amount of time. And there's ways that you can measure this. The USGS measures this at their stream flow gauges. But for our purposes, we're just taking a general observation. So we're talking about conditions relative to the entire range of flows experienced at a given site. So obviously you don't know what a stream looks like over all time, but just do your best to think about when you get to the stream, does this look like the typical amount of flow? Does it look like a lot lower than what you're used to seeing or a lot higher? So for low flow, you would select low flow because the conditions are low relatively. Generally, low flows occur during the late summer and late winter when we haven't had a lot of rain, but before the snow starts melting. The typically some signs to look out for low flow, but not always the case, are the stream is going to be partially dry with gravel bars exposed that weren't normally. So you can see in this photo, we've got like these rocks over here. If those are normally covered in water and now they're completely dry, that's probably low flow. And it may be possible to walk along the edge of the dry stream bed.
Megan, is there anything you can do about those?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
There we go. All right, so then the next type of flow or flow level that we will encounter is the moderate flows. So these are the low flows are the lowest 25% of flows. The moderate are going to be the middle 50%. So they're the most typical flows experienced at a stream. It can occur any time of year. Generally speaking, the majority of the stream bed is underwater, but it's not coming up to the top of the stream bank. So if this is like the bank right here or here, it's not all the way up to here. That being said, you might also have moderate flows when a stream looks like this. So this is completely full from bank to bank, but it's a really shallow river and the water is moving incredibly slowly. So we call these streams slow winders. They're usually occurring in wetlands where you have like barely flowing water, but it is flowing through a wetland. So that is also a moderate flow. And a high flow in this situation would probably be if the water's like moving a lot faster or kind of spilling out above the edges, like into these like reeds here. Then we've got high flow. So these are the highest 25% of flows. They generally occur during the spring, during snow melt, and in the late fall when we've had a lot of rain, but it can occur any time of year due to heavy recent rainfall. So usually we have in the past when we were doing high flow sampling, usually it takes like a half inch of rain to an inch of rain to cause a truly high flow. We have a separate observation for freshet, which says that is strictly due to has it rained recently? We'll get to that next. But high flow is specifically because the rains have rained kind of a lot. So it's probably been like a half inch to an inch of rain within the past 24 to 48 hours. but it depends on the watershed. So smaller streams will experience high flows a lot faster. So they'll get really high really quickly after the rain, and then they'll drop right back down. And a bigger stream might take a little while for all that water in the watershed to get to the stream. The key thing is it's not yet in a flood stage, so it's not yet spilling onto the floodplain, but it's close. Then we have flood. This one should be pretty obvious. This happens generally less than 5% of the time. Your stream is going to be exceeding the bank full and accessing the floodplain, and you'll see trees or vegetation that isn't normally wet will be completely submerged. So like in this photo, and when this is happening, we say do not sample because this is a big safety concern. It's really easy to get swept away in floodwaters. So, or there's the risk of flash flooding also. So just be aware that this is not a good time to sample. But you can still record in the survey 123 that you tried to sample and there was flood conditions. Here's just another way of looking at it. So this is like our pretend stream cross section. So here, if the stream is completely full from bank to bank, that would be high flow. Moderate would be somewhere in the middle. And then low flow is when it's just confined to the deepest channels of the stream. And then here's the floodplain where we have our trees. Any questions about that?
There weren't any questions in the chat, but there was a suggestion. You can bring a trash picker with you. You can get some trash out.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Elevating that from the chat.
We had
Yeah.
we had one site, this is Joanne. We had one site where it would almost be dry on above the stream. Or you know, like a culvert, and it was going under a road. And then it would be wet and the flow would be okay on the other side. So
Yeah.
there had to be springs or something in there. So
Yeah.
I don't know, that was weird. I mean,
Yeah, that is a weird situation if it is spring fed. It also could be like maybe on the other side, it was more like ponding flow. So it might have been like full of water, but it just wasn't moving quickly. But yeah, spring fed, there are situations where you could have high flows, but it's base flow, meaning it's not fresh. It wasn't from a rain event. And that would be a weird scenario, but I haven't encountered it yet in LaRosa. So. But if you do encounter that, we can talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we're going to play everyone's favorite game show, low, moderate, high, or flood. What do we think this one is? Anyone in the room? Yeah, you guys can say that loud.
Yeah, it's insane.
Moderate. Anyone in the chat saying anything
Moderate
different? Yep, so that is moderate. It's not full to the top of the bank. That would be high flow, but it's not low and exposing dry parts of the stream. So correct. How about this one? This one's tricky. Yeah, do your best. I know we're kind of looking at like static photos, so it makes it harder.
Ooh.
No, that.
Yeah, this one's a hard
Got a
one.
lot of lows in the chat as well.
Okay.
Some moderates.
Yeah, so when we did this, we said low because like maybe these rocks are not usually exposed. But like sometimes I have seen streams like this where it's just a big river. So it's either just it's never covering the whole, like the White River, I think can be kind of like this sometimes in places. Yeah, exactly.
Meant to spread way
Right,
out when
yeah.
it gets really hot.
Yeah, so some streams just spread way out, and then sometimes you have like the Connecticut River, which doesn't always have dry, even during low flow, won't have dry sections. It'll just be like very, very low water. So yeah, do your best based on your expert knowledge of this stream, because you'll be going here 8 times throughout this summer and spring. All right, how about this one? This one's a little easier.
Yeah.
I heard high in the room.
I see high in the chat.
Correct. This is high. It's coming right up to the edge of the stream bank, and you can see that it was recently flooding because these this vegetation is all flattened on the side here.
How do we know it's not a flood anymore? We also got flood in the chat.
Yeah, it does look like it might be like flooding a little bit here. So, you know, this is a continuum. So just pick which one it seems to be closer to. And that's okay. Because yeah, there's definitely going to be low, moderate, high, close to flood. So yeah, pick what you think it fits closer to. And we're talking about right in the immediate vicinity of your site. So like, sure, maybe it might be flooding like down here, but you're sampling up here. All right, what about this one? This one's a tricky one. All right, I'm hearing moderate in the room here.
Moderate in the chat, low in the chat.
Yeah, so this might be one where it depends on the stream. Like to me, these piles of gravel look like they got pushed there during like a past flood. Like the stream, that's the stream just kind of accumulating sediment piles as it moves. But if they weren't typically there, and then you came and they suddenly were exposed, these gravel bars, then that would be a low. But in this case, I think this might be more moderate. I don't think those gravel bars are normally
Yeah, they're
completely.
higher. Looks like they're higher.
Exactly. Yeah, they're like mounded pretty high. Yeah. All right. What about this one? Yeah, flood. So this one's flood. What about this one? Heard moderate. Chat's coming in still.
Yep, chat's going moderate.
Chat's going moderate. Correct, it's moderate. Yeah, you can see like maybe some stuff exposed here, but yeah, it looks like most of the stream bed is covered. All right, so now we're moving on to the second type of flow observation. So that was flow level. Now we're talking about flow type. And flow type refers mostly to where is the water coming from. So if subsurface flows account for almost all the water reaching the streams, so that would be springs and just water that's in the stream traveling through the watershed, that would be base flow. And then the other flow type is freshet, which we'll talk about next. So here in my graph here, I have, this is a hydrograph. This came from the USGS gauge on the Black River. And I think this came from one of Kelly's reports back in the day when we used to require reports. So we've got on the x-axis, the timeline, and on the y-axis, the flow measured in CFS. And the orange dots point out to where the sample events occurred on the hydrograph. So here you can see that the level of flow is remaining relatively constant. So that would be a base flow. Here, you know, there's some like ups and downs a little bit, but this would probably also be base flow. Of course, you won't have a hydrograph to refer to, but you can look to see if there's been recent rain. And if there hasn't been rain in the past couple of days and the flows seem to be kind of typical because they usually co-occur, base flow usually co-occurs with moderate and low flow. In theory, you could have a high base flow. I did see that happening with all the flooding in 2023, where we just had so much water in the system that it was like higher than normal. And that was just because we had so much water that summer. But generally speaking, you're only going to have base flow co-occurring with low and moderate. And I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario where you'll have flooding, unless you have a spring, maybe, where flood and base are co-occurring, because by definition, floods occur because of heavy rain and snowmelt. All right, and then the other flow type is when the water is actively rising or falling in response to a rain event or snowmelt. So that's why you have so much of this spiking in the spring months, because this is also happening because of snow. So all of these are freshet, it's either on the rising or the falling. And even these little spikes here would also be freshet, just the little tiny ones under lower base or moderate flow. So these dotted lines, this represents anything below this tiny dotted line is the low flows. Moderate is in between the dotted lines and high flows are above this dashed line. A sign you would see, again, because you're not going to know, if you know it rained yesterday. So generally speaking, it's if it rained recently, like in 24 hours, could be up to 48 hours if it was a really heavy rain. Or the other thing to keep in mind is the size of the watershed. So the Connecticut River is a huge watershed. It takes a couple days for the water to get through the system. And the topography, yeah. So, and then like these high mountain, tiny streams are gonna like probably go back to base in like an hour. So it depends. But look to see if the water is turbid. So if it's really brown, That probably means like if you look right now, this time of year, a lot of the streams are really brown. So that's coming from snow melt or rain, depending. And yeah, so this can co-occur with all flow levels. So it can be a base, freshet low, freshet moderate, freshet high, or freshet flood. And the last flow type I forgot to mention, we do have one more. This is hydroflow. So this is when this is kind of a unique situation that doesn't happen for most of our sites. So this is when water levels are rapidly rising or falling solely due to a planned release of water from a dam. So mainly this is happening on the Connecticut River, where we've got like many dams all throughout the river regulating the water level. So I think for the Connecticut River group, who's CRJC, who's sampling along the Connecticut River, you guys will probably always be saying hydroflow. There's one other site I know of on like it's a tributary to Lake Dunmore that also is regulated by the dam as well. And the way you would tell this is if there's no recent rain or precipitation and your water level is changing. But yeah, but that can be tricky to tell. So if you're unsure, we can get online and check on the, there's an ANR Atlas online. It's like a mapping software site that's available to the public, and they have a layer on there for where all the dams are. Not all dams are actively moderating the flow, or I mean, they're all like changing the level, but they're not all of them are actively releasing water and storing water like they are on the Connecticut. So if you're not sure, you can always put it in the comments. But and even if you are doing hydroflow, it's helpful to have in the comments if it rained recently, which is why we probably will add in that question to the survey 123 asking about if it rained recently. And then the last option, this isn't truly a flow type, but this is another option on the survey 123. This is no flow. So this is what I'm talking about, where there's water not really flowing. Like there's a tiny dribble of water flowing through this culvert, but not enough to sample without contamination. So you wouldn't sample here, but you would still complete your flow observation saying it's no flow. But don't collect a sample under this situation. And again,
Flow type or flow level?
it's both. So we have it automatically fill out no flow for the flow level, no flow for the flow type. Yeah, but technically it would be like extremely low base. So yeah. And when I say no flow, I'm not talking about like really slow flow, like imperceptibly slow, but you've still got like 4 feet of water. I'm talking about like truly the stream is dry or very low. This is a helpful tool. This is a website called CocoRaws. We'll send this out in a link, and we're going to send out a whole bunch of links and resources to you following up this training. And coordinators, you can send these out to your forward my email to the volunteers. So this is a volunteer collected rain data website. So people measure in their backyards how much rain occurred, and they upload it to this website. So it shows you how much rain has occurred in the past 24 hours. So if you're not really sure if it rained before you go sampling, you can double check and see, oh, how much rain did we get in the past 24 hours? And that can kind of clue you in if it's freshet or likely to be freshet or base. All right, and then here we've got the question about turbidity. So just to clarify, turbidity refers to muddy water where the sediment is all suspended throughout the stream. So it's going to look like really chocolate milk, like just like this stream if it's turbid, and if it's not turbid, it'll be clear. Any questions?
For climate precipitation.
Oh, okay.
Maps as
Okay.
well on the end of
Good
the
to know.
website.
Okay, yeah, I'll write that down.
And there were no questions in the chat.
All right. I'm gonna kind of skip through these. I think because
We're only 5 minutes.
Okay, we made up some time. All right, we'll do the questions. So during a freshet, the water level can rise in response to A, a rain event, B, snowmelt, or C, both A and B.
Hearing C in the room, C in the chat.
Great. Yes, both A and B. Should you collect a sample if your site looks like this? And I know it's not a great photo because it's just um, kind of zoomed in, but when I ask, should you collect a sample, I mean, are the flows too low to be able to collect a sample here?
Seeing some yeses or A's in the chat. Here are the same.
Correct. Yes, you should collect a sample. It might look on first observation that this isn't really flowing, but there's still quite a bit of water there. And you can actually see here, there's like a reed kind of sticking up in the water. So you can tell it is flowing. Another way to check is like if you, like we've said before, which direction the flow is going, you can like drop a leaf in and see where it moves to. But yeah, as long as there's water and it's connected and it's continuous, then please collect a sample. Should you sample if your site looks like this? And again, I know it's kind of tricky to tell.
It looks standard.
Like a mix in the chat.
Yeah.
Also seeing a mix. You're in a mix.
So in this case, the first thing I would do is, so I don't see any areas, at least in this photo, where it's completely cut off. So it might look stagnant, but as long as it's still connected and there's no like dry area. And then the other thing to consider is, can you collect a sample without getting the sediment in it? So I wouldn't sample like here, but maybe over here where it looks a little deeper, even if it's stagnant, that's okay. You might, as long as you can collect a sample without contaminating. And as long as it's not disconnected. So if this were all dry across the entire stream bed, then you wouldn't collect a sample. But because I see a continuous line of water from here, and I'm assuming it continues farther down, then I would collect a sample here. This one's tricky because there's a beaver dam, but should you collect a sample if your site looks like this? So we got like a beaver dam up here where there's deeper water and then very little kind of coming through the dam.
Yeah, mostly nose in the chat, but a little bit of a mix. So mostly nose.
Okay. In this situation, I would say let's move the site. So you would probably not collect here just because this beaver dam up here, it's going to be ponding. So it's going to be kind of changing things. And down here, it looks like really low. It'd be hard to get a sample without collecting sediment. So in this case, I'd say probably no at this particular location. This is an example of when we look to maybe move to a different spot that's kind of either well below or above the beaver dam. Yeah, beaver dams are tricky when the beavers move in. They make our sampling a little more complicated. Should you sample if your site looks like this? And I'll give a hint. There's a lake up here. Could be. So yeah, so
yes as well.
yeah,
It's all around.
I heard some good points here. So it kind of depends on if there's backflow. In this situation, if the lake is really starting like right here, if it's all the way back there, maybe this is okay. But if it's like closer to like maybe if you're only 10 or so feet from the shore, you're probably too close and you're probably getting some lake influence in there. So in this case, I think I said trick question. Yes, but not here. The site is probably influenced by the lake. Move it upstream. So yeah, use your judgment. If it's not backflowing, you probably could sample here, but this is one that's going to be really prone to backflow. All right, what about this one? This is another beaver dam one. So these are tricky.
Mostly nose in the chat.
Yeah. So this is another one where we probably would want to move it. I mean, it looks like it is deeper down here, but that water is like a completely different color. So I don't know. So that's really interesting. Yeah, so that would be a tough one. I would probably move this site too, because that's just a hard situation to sample in. Oh yeah, I think I was saying like move it farther downstream, would be the best in this situation. All right, what about this one? And I'll point out that this is more of a hard bottom, so it looks like there's rocks here, not sediment. Seeing some nods in here. Anything in the chat? Yes?
Yes, mostly yeses in the chat.
Yeah, so I think you could collect a clean sample in here. So yeah, so this would be okay. All right, what about this one?
Seeing some.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I say no, it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Someone said yes, as long as you feel safe.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So if you had a river dipper, I think and especially if you knew this was like receding, like you can tell that the water level is shrinking. Someone actually did sample here safely, so that's why I have a photo of it. But I want to caution you against sampling if you're unsure if it's safe, and try to stay on the firm ground. Another thing to be aware of is right after floods, that sometimes the banks can be really unstable. So you might be able to stay on the bank and collect a sample safely, but that bank might be unstable and it might collapse into the river. This one looks like it's probably fine. It's not like an overhanging bank, but if you have a steeper bank with a lot of exposed roots in it, that might be unstable. So just be really aware of that. Yeah, just be careful. So yeah, we generally say if it's recently flooded or it's currently flooding, don't sample. All right, well, I think we're ready to move on to the survey 1, 2, 3.
Oh, and there's a raised hand.
Oh, yes.
So,
Yeah, I just do something in the chat real quick. With the flooding really high waters, even if the sampler does feel safe doing so, would those test results be useful at all, or would they just be kind of like everything's off the charts? It's not helping us very much.
No, that's useful. That's why we used to target high flow samples specifically, because we want to see the full range of conditions that can be experienced at this stream. It
Right, but
depends on
high flow versus flood, I'm thinking though.
True. Yeah, that's true. No, I think the flood is still interesting. Like I found it super interesting after the 23 and 24 floods to see that data. And yeah, so
Gotcha. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
I think it's still useful. But again, safety is more important. So yeah.
thank you. So now we're gonna talk about the survey 1, 2, 3 flow data. That's what, if you've been a partner with us before, that's might be what you think of as being mostly on the phone. This is mostly an app that we use to help us collect flow data to a dashboard that we have. It's a really helpful system for us. It like connects very seamlessly and it's great. It should also be pretty easy to use for you all. I'm going to explain it now, and then there's also resources online that'll help you figure out if you have any questions, but it's not overly complex. So Survey 1, 2, 3 is an app. It's made by like Esri, the ArcGIS people. It's free and there's no account needed. And that's something to remember. You'll never need an account to use the app. It's pretty user friendly. It works on smartphones, computers, and tablets. So the app can also be used on your computer the same way you would use it on a phone or a tablet if you've done it before. It is usable offline and doesn't require cell service. So you can take it into the field with you and still be able to fill out the survey. And in the app, you're able to view and edit your past submissions. So you'll be able to see submissions from before and edit them if necessary. And you can copy a submission into a new survey. So maybe you are a project coordinator and you are inputting everyone's surveys, all of your volunteers. In the app, you'll be able to copy it and just make little changes to reflect the new site, even on your computer using the app. There's also a browser version, so that is web connected, does need internet, and that would be like going to a website. And it's similar questions, sample name, partner site, and things like that. Except in the web version, you are not able to copy and paste like submissions or see previous submissions. It's kind of just like any kind of online form, you put it in and then it goes away. So that's one of the major differences. A lot of people find the app once they understand it, like the simplest, it has the most features, and it's also like not complex.
Yeah, but if you have volunteers who maybe don't have smartphones or adverse to using them or don't want to take a phone in the field, this is a very simple way. And this is best when you're just doing it for one or two sites. If you're a project coordinator doing it on behalf of a bunch of your volunteers, you're probably going to want the app. It'll make your life a lot easier. But this is just simple. You click a link, you fill it out, and you submit it. The only downside too also is it needs to be online. So this one does have to be connected to the internet. The app does not.
Also, if you are taking most of your data in the app and in the field, and you plan to use the browser version, you're not going to be able to access it if you don't have self-service. So you're going to need to write all that data down and then put it into the browser version after. So Survey123 app. You don't need to do this at this time, but this is the link you will go to. We'll send out a link and a QR code to download the app onto your phone or whatever device. You can also find it in the App Store. It's a very popular app. It's like easy to get.
Yeah.
You'll download it regularly.
Yeah, if you just search Survey123, it should come right up. Mhm.
And this is what it'll look like when you very first time you click into it. You'll see it says sign in with ArcGIS, manage. You can ignore both of those. You don't need an account. You can continue without signing in. So that's what you'll click. You'll type, sorry, one second. Type or click the link in your phone or computer browser for the first time. Because this app, it's like for storing survey. So it has our survey, it has everyone's survey. But you don't want to see everyone's survey, you just want ours. So to do that, the app will open blank, and then you'll put in the survey you want, which is ours, via a link that we provide to you.
So yeah, so this is that link. It's the same link that also prompts the app download because it's all in one place. We'll show you what that looks like. And is it on the next page? Yeah. So it'll open up this. This is how you would download the app. Gives you the choice browser or app. This is not updated yet for this year. So right now, if you were to, at the second, click this link and load it in, it'll load in last year's survey. So when we're ready and we've updated it for this year, we'll send it out to you. And for volunteers, you should get an email from your coordinator forwarding that too.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I did want to just mention you only need to load it in once at the beginning of the season, and then it'll be there in the app for the whole season. And it does need to be online.
And it lets you make new surveys.
Yes, yeah, and we'll show you how that works. But the other thing to keep in mind is if you used Survey123 with us last year, your old one will still be loaded in. That's totally fine. Once we push the update, it'll auto prompt you to update it when you go to open it. So just make sure whether you've used it in the past or you've never used it before, just make sure on internet you're loading in the new survey or updating if you already have it just once online, and then you should be good to go for the rest of the season. And then, yeah, again, it'll give you this page and you will click open in the app.
Yeah. Or get it from Microsoft or Apple or wherever your apps you get them from, you can get it there. Also on a computer. So you can use the app on the computer, like all other apps on a computer, separate from the web, or you can go to like your browser, like Safari or Chrome or Firefox, and put in the link. So when you have loaded the survey in, it'll look like you'll LPP flow data, you'll have that little rectangle. And then you can click collect. So you'll click that survey because that's one you want to use, and then collect, and it'll bring up the survey that we would like you to fill out. So you can see the different sections. It has sampler name, partner organization, site, date and time, location, sample site status. There are others as well. You'll see more pages as we go. You're going to want to make sure you fill out the site once per site for every sampling event. Even if you don't collect a sample at a site, please fill out the survey, and you'll just, there's a box or like a circle that will say did not sample. And that's fine. Fill out all the information, just say did not sample, and you can submit that.
This was because you visited the site.
Even if you didn't visit, so if you were on vacation and you didn't sample, we still want you to submit this, and we'll explain that later. Because the reason why is like when we're looking for missing surveys, we can't tell the difference between I was on vacation and I forgot to submit my flow observations. So that's why we ask for that. So we just know it was intentionally skipped, and it shows up in our dashboard as having at least been acknowledged. So we're not like, is this missing or not? Yeah.
Question,
So-
if somebody else samples on your behalf, like I'm going on vacation, my neighbor's gonna do the site for me, they know the site, they know how to do all of this, or my buddy is gonna do this, because I have each site hopefully has two people who can pinch hit for each other. So if the site doesn't get skipped, person one who's on vacation doesn't need to fill out, oh, I didn't sample. Just
Right.
go on vacation, ignore
Yeah.
everything. We got you
Right.
covered. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Or if even if you were, say you were on vacation, but for like a week, and then you were able to reschedule and sample before the pickup, like the next week, you wouldn't say I was on vacation the last week and then fill out a second survey when you actually did. Just do it once
Perfect.
per sample event. Yeah. And that goes for duplicates too. So if you have a duplicate, you don't need to submit a second survey because you collected a duplicate. Like the flow level hasn't changed in the 2 minutes between you collecting the duplicates or the regular. Yeah. So yeah, just once per sample event. Yep.
Walk you through a little bit of what it'll look like. So you put in the sampler name, your partner organization, and then based on your partner organization, we've got a drop down of different sites in the site section. So if you try and select your site and you're like, actually don't recognize any of these, make sure you put in the right partner organization, because that's how it's like decide what sites to show you. Everything with an asterisk is required. So if there is no asterisk, it's not required information. It's still really helpful to us. That's why we put the question on the form. But maybe like you're a project coordinator and you don't know the sampler's name, it wasn't written down, you read it blank, that's okay. But for things like the date and time, very important. It will, when you open the survey will take the date and time from your phone wherever you open it. Same with the sample location as well. If you have location services enabled on your device, your phone will give that information over to the survey. And it's important that you notice that and make sure it's correct, or it was correct to your knowledge. And if you're a project coordinator looking back at these, like copying in a bunch of different volunteers' information, making sure that you change that information, because it'll be based on what your computer says or your phone says, and you actually want it to reflect the time of the sample.
Yeah.
Not the time right now.
Yeah, so that's especially important for date and time. So if you're doing it after the fact or you're on someone else's behalf, change the date and time. The location, in a perfect world, you would update the location also so it shows up properly in our dashboard. But if that doesn't bother you, that's going to be showing up at the wrong location. Or we have we have one observation coming from Oregon. I don't know how that happened. One in a lot show up on 0, if it doesn't do a location enabling, that's totally fine. Especially for project coordinators doing a bunch. We don't want this to be a hassle for you. So the location is helpful. So if you're able to take it in the field, it's really helpful for quality assuring, because Benny and I can go back and look and see, was this, if we see that a sample came through and we're like, that's weird, the location doesn't match the name of the site, we can then go back and see if you accidentally swapped samples or something like that. So it is helpful for us to have for quality assurance, but not
That
needed.
doesn't come up automatically.
It will, if you are the one filling out the survey at your site. If you're at home filling out the survey, it'll bring up your home location.
Oh,
Yeah,
And
So-
we want it to have the site location.
Yeah.
So you would.
so it will take the site of where we go.
exactly. Yeah. But if it is at your home, that's okay. Like if you don't know how to change it or you don't have time to change it, that's fine. It's just helpful like we can usually tell if it's like this is from me being at the lab, so I can tell this is not at a stream. This is although I guess there is a stream nearby, but yeah, we can usually tell. And I know where a lot of your organizations are based. So if I see this is coming from like CRC's office, then I know where that is. Or Addison County River Watch's office.
Then we also have this sample site status. This is where you will say whether or not a sample was actually collected. So your first level is water sample collected. You'll move on to the next questions that come up. And then we have sample or stream is flood level and not safe for sampling, stream is dry, or not sampled for other reasons. So this is where you'll say the stream is dry, or you were out and weren't able to sample or something like that. And make a note of it, you'll get a little information box where you can type in what happened, just so we know. But we always want you to be submitting the survey, even if you're gonna take a sample. Then you'll have the section where you can type the lab sample ID, which is that bolded number on the label. The 0 will start with 25, so 2025. You just want to type that in where prompted. It will help with like quality assurance too. And then we have the stream flow observation, so the flow level. We also have the flow type and question about turbidity. Then there's also where the question about rain will be. And if you forget about flow level or flow type, we have these little like light bulb notes to try and jog your memory about how to tell the difference. Those really will only pop up if you are in like have cell service or on internet. So if you know beforehand that you're like not really sure about flow type or flow level, you can always check in that like training and education section on the website. So photos, there's a section in the app for photos. We really like it if you submit photos. It's really helpful to give us a sense of what your base level looks like, a moderate or low flow or something like that. And also sometimes if you accidentally click that it was a fresh event when you meant that it was base, we can look at your photo and say, oh, but it wasn't raining in that picture. They must have just clicked the wrong thing. And that's really helpful to us. And the way to do that is to go in and like you can click that camera icon. If you're in the field right there, you just want to take a picture while you're doing it. Or if you are like, I have my phone, but I'm going to do this later on the computer. You can like take a picture on your phone or your device, save it to your files, and then however you would normally get a picture from your phone to your laptop or computer, do that, and then upload it by clicking on the file button. That makes sense. And at the bottom is the additional field observations. So any other relevant information, smells, outfall pipe, beaver dam, algal growth, things like that can all go right into that box. Anything that you think you should know. And so important to know is when you click into that box, your keyboard will pop up because you're going to type something. And then you have to make sure to hit like done, because how you're going to submit the survey is that little check mark in the corner. And if your keyboard is covering that check mark, you can't submit anything. And so you need to make sure you close your keyboard, click the check mark, and then click send now, and that will submit the survey. You can only send a survey if you're online or have cell service. If you're not online, you'll be prompted to click save in outbox. You will not have a send now option. And you can save it in your outbox, and you'll get this little green 1 or 2, how many surveys you have saved in your outbox in the corner. And that's how you remember, oh, I have to submit these, because they're still on your phone or in your app. You just want to make sure they get to us. They haven't been uploaded yet. It's important to remember to check your outbox if you remember, like, you have cell service, you didn't submit a survey when you get back from the field, so that you're not just holding on to a bunch of surveys. You don't know what happened to them. Yep, so that's what it'll look like. You can just click into the outbox and you can either click the send button to send all the submissions at once. You can also click into individual surveys if that's something you ever need to do. Maybe you need to edit to one or something, change a sampler name, like click into them. And then send them, but you can also send them all at once.
Yeah.
With that send button.
And I'll also point out, there's also the sent box here. So once it's sent, the outbox will disappear. And then, so this would then say 3 for 3 sent surveys. And that's how you would edit a submission even after it's sent. You can go click on the sent box and you can actually edit. It'll show up a list of all your sent stuff and you can go back in and edit or see what you've already submitted. We go over this in more detail in the Survey 123 training that's on our website. That we have like a YouTube tutorial for.
So all of that was for the app. If you are not going to use the app, you don't want to bring a device into the field or something like that, flow data can be submitted through the browser. As I think I said earlier, you're going to want to make sure to record your observations on a piece of paper or something like that, so that you can get your accurate observations into the survey. And make sure you write down the date and time with the like AM or PM, because that's something that's easy to forget to write down. But it is a necessary part of the survey, and we don't want you to get to filling out the survey and be like, well, now I have to make up the date. So we'd rather you just know what it is. And photos are not required. They don't have an asterisk next to them. You'll be able to submit without them, but we do really like to see them. So if you get a chance, take them and upload them.
Does the field sheet have places to enter all this information?
This field sheet. This has date and time, but that's it. So, and this is for the lab, so they actually take it from us. They scan them, so I can usually like go back and look at them, but sometimes they don't. So usually, that's why we need it twice in the Survey 123 and on this field sheet, because one's for the lab and the chemistry and one's for the flow. Yeah, and then this link is the same exact link, so it just, it works for everything. It works for downloading the app, it works for loading the survey into the app, and it works for opening in the browser, because as we mentioned, it'll pop up this screen, a link to the app here. If you wanted to use the survey in the app, you would click this one, and if you just want to open it in the browser, you would select this one. So we try to keep it simple, all the same link, but again, it's not ready yet for this year.
And this is what the flow data dashboard looks like. So it has all of the different, actually it has the sample year at the top, the partner organization and the sampling dates. So you'll be able to select your partner organization and select your sampling event and see that your survey was uploaded. This will be an automatic process. So as soon as you hit send, it'll be populated into this site. So this is the total sites observed. So this is for the year 2023, I think. You can see 274 total sites. But if it was filtered by partner organization or by sample event, that number would be solved. Here's where we can see the total observations per site. So because this is for the entire sampling year of 2023, we want to see 8 at each site. But if this is, you've only done one sample event, you look for your partner group, you'll see a number 1. If it's your second sample event, you'll want to see 2 for all of your sites, 33, something like that. And this is really good for coordinators to check and make sure that all of their flow observations are being submitted. So if it's your third sampling event and you look and you see that one of your sites only has one sample, like a 1 next to it, you can think, oh, we're missing 2 of our observations. We need to track those down. It's a lot easier if the project coordinators do it, because it is really difficult for Megan and I to come to this at the end of the season and be like, well, I need to find all of these low surveys.
Yeah, so you can see here, there's like this number 7. We don't know, was that only sampled 7 times or was 1 skipped? And we can go back and we can look in our system and we can see like, oh, okay, yes, it was sampled, but we don't have the flow observations. And then we have to go like track you down. And so it's just a lot harder, and it's very time consuming, especially at the end of the season. We usually end up with a lot of missing surveys by the end. And some of them are ones that just were skipped and not sampled, but some are forgotten flow observations.
So the way to get to this flow data dashboard is it's on our website. It's in the quick links kind of near the bottom. You have the LPP flow data dashboard, and you have the flow data dashboard video tutorial, which you can also look at. That information is also in trainings and protocol. If you happen to be on that page, you'll be able to find it as well. Are there any questions? Don't. Yes, the dashboard is available to volunteers. I'll do that in the chat. And I think, yes, all set.
Okay.
Questions in the room? Okay, we're gonna do some review. If you get to a site, it is dry, so you do not collect a sample. You shouldn't submit a flow sample through the flow observation survey. Is this true or false? Seeing thumbs down in the room, some false in the chat. Yes, that's a correct answer. Should always submit a flow observation survey. You were on vacation and did not collect a sample on your normal sample day. You should A, make an educated guess on flow level and type, and submit a flow survey in Survey 123. Reschedule your sampling for another day before the next sample pickup and submit a flow survey, or submit a flow survey and choose a sample status option, not sample for other reasons.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of B's in the chat. Yes, so you can do, if you can do B, please do B, please reschedule and find time so you can actually get your sample to us. But if you can't, still fill out the survey. Just say you weren't able to sample.
Yeah, so the important thing is one or the other. But you
Yes.
could do either. It's a trick question. I was trying to be tricky.
Is it the responsibility of Benny and Megan to review the flow data dashboard for missing flow observations? At the end of the day.
Yeah. At the end of the day, yes.
At the end of the day, yes, but
But-
actually, no.
Actually, no. Yeah, it's we ask that coordinators are reviewing that.
Yes. Only if you bought me cookies, I will do it. That's my budget.
True. Yeah, we should say that. We are very easily persuaded by food. Okay, so we're running a little behind, so I'm going to try to breeze through this. All right, so sample preservation. Some things you need to know. All samples have a specific amount of hold time, which just means how long they're good until the data starts to go bad. Meaning like the sample starts to go bad and the data that comes back isn't as trustworthy. So for nitrogen and chloride, that's 28 days. For phosphorus, it's 21. We do keep track of if a sample is over its hold time. It's usually not a big deal because these are by really strict chemical standards. So for our purposes, if it's close to the hold time, I'm not worried about it. If it's 2 months over the hold time, then that's a different story. All of the samples you're going to want to store in the plastic sample racks we will be distributing to you. And again, that should be stored in order of the bolded sample ID on the label. And make sure you're keeping your samples in a safe place where kids or pets or whoever aren't going to get into them. And if you have nitrogen samples, so the blue capped ones, make sure you label them as hazardous. The acid is probably pretty diluted, but still, we don't want anyone drinking samples regardless. So, and then for just the total nitrogen, these need to be kept cold. So immediately after sampling, they need to be put on ice and then put in a fridge. I mean, you could in theory keep them on ice the entire time. The point is just keep them cold. Ice packs work, but the more samples you have, the less the ice packs work, because sometimes if the sample itself isn't physically touching the ice pack, it's not really keeping it cold enough. It needs to be at 4 degrees Celsius, which is, your fridge will definitely be that cold. But with an ice pack, it might not be. So we recommend ice in a Ziploc bag is the best way to do it. But if you have ice packs, that's fine too. Just make sure you have a lot of ice packs kind of surrounding all of your samples. And then you're also going to need to acidify the nitrogen samples within 24 hours of collection. So again, storing them in, oh yeah,
Is this like, or can we bring them back from the field not on ice, or what is it like preferable that
it's preferable it's on ice, like even right after you sample. If you're driving 5 minutes, it's not gonna make a difference. But if you're driving a long distance, you probably should bring like a little lunch pack. If anyone needs a cooler or ice packs, we have plenty of ice packs, like those reusable ice packs are like the plastic bag ones that are kind of disposable. But we have a limited number of coolers, so we don't have enough for everybody, but we do have some if you need them. And then again,
all the samples in there?
yeah, you can put all the samples on the ice. The only thing to be aware of is if it freezes in the glass, it can break the glass.
Right.
So, and it goes for if you're putting them in the fridge too, like our fridge sometimes is cold in the back and it freezes the samples, so. Okay, so again, these TP and CL don't need to be kept cold, but you can keep them cold if you'd like. They don't need to be acidified. Just make sure they aren't freezing. And same is true for nitrogen. Make sure that one's not freezing either, because I've seen the plastic break before too.
There was a question, comment. We sometimes use a water bottle mostly full and freeze it.
Yep,
for ice
that
packs.
works too. Yeah, you can use as long as there's enough. Like if you have, I would say if you have like only a couple samples, that's enough. But if you have a whole rack of samples, you're gonna want like probably 4 water bottles if you're doing that. All right, so for nitrogen acidification, the first thing you're gonna have to do is you're gonna need to read the safety data sheet, which we'll distribute to you. We'll give you a physical copy in your sample supplies. So you'll always have that on hand. That's all the chemical information you need to know about the sulfuric acid, which is in this dropper here. And you'll need to sign the safety agreement, acknowledging that you've read the safety data sheet and you understand the risks and that you've watched this training. We also have a acid demonstration YouTube tutorial video on our website too. So if someone is missing this training, they can watch that video also. You're always going to want to wear the provided disposable gloves and safety glasses when handling the acid. And if you have long hair, tie it back and remove any baggy clothing. Ideally, like I would put on like a flannel or something, like something with long sleeves that aren't necessarily baggy. That's best. And when you're wearing the gloves, never touch anything else really besides this, especially not your face or your mouth or your eyes. And try not to touch door handles with the gloves on too. Especially once you've touched the acid. If your gloves are clean, you can touch stuff, but it's just good practice not to when you're wearing the gloves. Don't acidify in the field. Choose a safe location near a sink or where you can easily access water in case there's a spill. If you do spill some acid, it's not a big deal. Again, make sure your gloves are on. I don't think you're going to be able to spill a lot because this is it's a little acid dropper bottle, so it has a very tiny opening. So you'd have to like smash the whole container in order to spill a lot of it. So if you do get a little bit of a spill, you can absorb the drips with the paper towel and then take the paper towel and put it in a plastic bag and seal that and put that in the trash. It's not going to like eat through the bag or anything. It's mostly just to keep anyone from, I don't know, sticking their hand in the trash and accidentally encountering this acid soaked towel. And then you are going to want to wash the area with soap and water, and it'll dilute and get rid of any remaining residue. If you do spill the acid on your skin or clothes, stay calm, remove the clothing, and immediately rinse with water for 15 minutes. The safety data sheet recommends contacting a medical professional. It's not necessarily an emergency, so this is more just to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't get worse. It's not going to like immediately dissolve your bone. Like I've had the acid get on me before. It just felt like a sting and I just washed it and I was completely fine. But some people might have a different reaction. It depends on how much acid you got on you. So again, the important thing is immediately dilute with water for 15 minutes and we recommend you just check in with a doctor. And because of the safety risks of the acid, we strictly require that only project coordinators who have attended this training or volunteers who we have specifically approved. So don't just say like, I'm on vacation, so I'm going to have so-and-so fill in for me. No, because we need to ensure that they have signed the safety agreement and they've taken this training, because there are risks involved with this. Yeah, but we do, in limited circumstances, if you need another person to do the acidification, just check in with us and we will make sure they're trained and have all the resources they need. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly run through the procedure. It's pretty straightforward. I'm gonna put on my safety goggles and gloves. I'm not actually gonna acidify, but I'm gonna go through the motions. So putting on my gloves. I am not near a sink, but I should be near a sink if I were truly doing this. I want to make sure I have a clear area and that there's no pets or children running around. I would recommend making sure you have a sample rack. And the first thing I always do is I line up my samples in order and I take the caps off first before I handle the acid, so it's all ready to go. Then I uncap the acid. And I'm not going to do it right now, but I would, this is what it looks like. And I would take this lid off and I would dispense 2 drops into each sample and then immediately put it back in its secondary container and cover it and cap the first container too. There might be a little bit of drips on the container, so that's why we have like this little absorbing paper towel in the bottom there. But yeah, that's why you need to wear the gloves, even if you didn't spill anything, because there might be a little bit dripping on the outside from the cap. And then you're going to immediately recap your samples and give them a little inversion to kind of mix it. And once you're done, you're going to want to so my glove just split, so obviously make sure your glove is working before you use it. You're gonna, when you finish, you're gonna carefully remove the gloves without touching your skin. So I'm just gonna grab it from the outside like this, roll it off upside down, and then I'm gonna stick my finger underneath and roll it like that. And then this is now the inside of the glove, so I can touch that and throw it away. And never reuse gloves, just throw them away. And then you can store your samples in the fridge or on ice and wash your hands. So.
And you get the kit, we'll just get enough acid for 4 tests.
No, you'll get the whole dropper. So you'll get, everybody just gets it should, yeah, because it's only 2 drops is going in, yeah.
And is there any way to store that or that?
The acid can just be stored room temperature. You can keep it in the fridge too if that's easier.
As long as your housemates know.
As long as people know, and it will have this label on it. So keep that danger label. Yeah. Yeah. Some people have like a mini fridge specifically for samples. I think it's probably not a good idea to store your samples in a food fridge, generally speaking, but some people have to. So just make sure it's like very well labeled or in like a separate drawer or something if you're going to be doing that. Any questions?
There was a question in the chat. Where's the safety agreement that we have to sign?
I'm going to be sending it out in a follow-up email after this training. And it's like an attachment. It's like a hard copy. And then we will be printing out a physical version and sending that out with the supplies too. So either way, you can get it back to us or take a picture of it if you sign the hard copy and send us a picture of it, or scan it if you have a scanner.
Question,
Yeah.
People that we're gonna be training to volunteer, do they need to sign any kind of waiver or something?
No, not for us, unless they're doing acid, which they shouldn't be. But yeah, but your organization might want to have them do that. So, so it's up to you. We don't require it for our purposes. So, yeah. All right, we're running a bit behind, so I'm just going to skim through these. Nitrogen must be sampled or acidified within 24 hours of collection. TP has a hold time of 21 days. Nitrogen and chloride have a hold time of 28. All volunteers can perform nitrogen acidification, true or false? False. If they are going to have if you're going to have a volunteer do acidification, you need to clear it with Benny and I first. And how many drops of sulfuric acid are required to acidify 1 nitrogen sample? 2. So because we are behind, do people still need a break? We can skip the last section, which isn't super critical, but it's about data, how we use the data and why. So we'll see. Let me minimize this so I can see the. If anyone really needs a break, maybe put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that everyone's okay, just kind of plowing through to the end here.
One no in the chat.
No break? Okay.
Someone is going to.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. All right, so we'll just keep going through. What do you say?
I said that means it's my turn, but it actually doesn't.
No. All right, so here are some safety tips for in the field. So carry a cell phone, ideally sample with a partner, and let someone know where you are and when you intend to return, and what to do if you don't return on time. Honor private property rights, so don't cross a landowner's property without their permission. If it's posted, don't go on the site and if it's posted saying no trespassing. Never wade in swift or high water, and yeah, so don't sample if the stream is at flood stage. If possible, have a first aid kit. And this is suggesting a medical form for each volunteer. So basically, if somebody has like an allergy, like to bees or something, that's good to know. Be aware of the nearest hospital and how to get there. And this is a big one, listen to weather reports before you go. So never monitor if severe weather or flash floods are predicted. Do not walk on unstable stream banks, and just be aware of wildlife, insects, and skin irritating plants. So we've got a couple here of examples. We've got poison parsnip and poison ivy, and then tick safety as well. I think everyone's seen a lot of tick safety content out there. So definitely do a tick check before you come back. Let's go through this pretty quickly.
Okay, yeah, so to access the data, you'll be emailed a PDF of raw data from Vail. The project coordinator and anyone else whom they've like designated will receive that. It takes about
so most, yeah, just to clarify, most volunteers won't receive this. So it'll just, usually it's just the project coordinator and maybe one other person.
Yeah. It takes about a month from the time that they'll receive the sample for that PDF to go out. This data has not gone through our QA/QC process. It is raw data. And this is like what it'll look like. Yeah.
Yeah, so don't share it. It's gone through the lab's QC process, but they don't necessarily know to look for things like a sample might have been swapped, like it was collected at the wrong site, or there was contamination in the sample from the sediment. So that's what we're looking for when we QC it. So don't share this data publicly if you are one of the people receiving it.
So project coordinators should give the PDFs for like suspect or off data. You're checking for extreme values that don't really have an explanation. So like sometimes freshet events, runoff causes like higher values for phosphorus and nitrogen, it'll cause lower for Cl. But if you're seeing like nitrogen in the thousands and it wasn't raining and you have no idea why that could possibly be, flagging should let Megan and I know. Especially if you're seeing it like month after month, that's definitely something that we want to look into. Also checking the duplicates. The duplicates are supposed to be pretty much the same. So if they're like beyond the 50% difference, that's another thing you should flag and that we should know so we can try and figure out why that's happening. This is also a really good time once you receive these PDFs. If you haven't been checking the flow data dashboard, you're just like not remembering, it's good to like link these two things in your brain. You get the PDF and you check the flow data dashboard and make sure all the surveys have been submitted. Consistent anomalies in the data may indicate improper sampling methods or contamination. We want to address those as soon as possible so that we can, fix that problem for the rest of the season. So that's why we're having people kind of skim these. So to access past LaRosa data, you can look in data and reports. So you just kind of click into there and you will get a page that looks like this, and you can see the current flow data dashboard, and that also has previous years. The Power BI, that's not really up to date, but we are working on it. The monitoring site details report, where you can see the monitoring site names and details by organization. This is up to date through 2023. and the water chemistry data report, where you can see the partner groups, like a data, and you can also export it. It's also like up to date through 2020. So after we've QC
Yeah, no,
data,
you're good. Yeah.
after like we finished QC in 2024, that's where you'll be able to access the 2024. Both of those databases slide I mentioned in the last two.
Yeah, and the chemistry data report also includes flow observations, just FYI. So
There's a video tutorial that Megan and I made in October. It's on this page. That's what it looks like.
yeah, and that just explains each of the different ways to access the data, and then some of these extra resources like the ANR Atlas or our state database and how to use all of those too.
And there's another link to the video under the quick links section. It's the data access tutorial. And that's like an in-depth version of what you could use these reports for.
Mhm.
This is what the monitoring site details report looks like. So you can see the partner IDs, the site names, lat long, town, location description, and year samples. And then this is the water chemistry data report where you can see the date visited, the location ID, LaRosa ID, so that's the site name, location name, and then all of the parameters that have been sampled there. Both of these pages can be exported using the little export button. It looks like a save logo with an arrow. So that's how you'll export the data if you need to use it for your purposes. Yes. Questions?
Okay. So we're not going to have time to go through this entire section, but I'll just breeze through the overall purposes. This is very similar to what we went through last year, so there's not really new information if you were part of this presentation last year. But just for those who don't know, this is why we collect the data. So our overall goal of this program is to provide meaningful water quality data for both the DEC and our partner organizations through community science. So some of our purposes are to improve our understanding of water quality conditions, fill data gaps, and strengthen our databases. We're also assisting our partners, their communities, and other local, state, and federal governments in stream conservation, protection, and remediation efforts by allowing for effective resource allocation and watershed planning. And then we're also engaging and educating the public about stream health. So these are like our big picture goals. And then we have our monitoring matrix, which if you nominated sites for us as a project coordinator, the sites you chose had to fit one of these specific umbrella categories. So these categories include characterizing conditions upstream of wastewater treatment facilities, assessing lake tributary contribution to nutrient and chloride loading in lakes, identifying potentially high quality waters, identifying potentially poor quality waters that might be impaired, or refine the extent of and source of the stressor impairing a stream we know is impaired. And then lastly, evaluate the effectiveness of our remediation efforts. So then what do we do with the data specifically? So for the wastewater data, that goes to the wastewater program, who then uses it in their permitting process. They take the upstream data, the wastewater treatment facility collects data on their discharge, and then they put that into a model to see if the facility is affecting water quality downstream negatively. And if they are, then they can adjust their permit as necessary. So that's why your data is really helpful for that. Then the lake tributary data is being used for these lake watershed action plans, which if you're curious about, contact me and we can talk more about that. But I think almost all of our groups who are participating are part of a lake watershed action plan process. Then the third possibility is we're going to be screening for potentially high quality waters. So if we look at the chemistry data and it comes back really high quality, so all the values are really low, then that might be a potentially high quality site, and we would then collect bug data there also to verify that. Same thing with potentially impaired waters, except it'd be the opposite. We'd be seeing really high values, which might indicate it's potentially impaired. We would then collect bug data to confirm that. Or if we know it's impaired, we might be trying to refine where the impairment is coming from, and seeing how far up the stream it goes, or where the sources might be coming from. And then lastly, number 5 is the most specific and involved one, which involves sampling above and below a project like farm project where new best practices were implemented to kind of keep the cows out of the stream, or fix a manure pit that's been leaking into a stream, whatever it is, sampling above and below that project. And then before and after the project implementation. So this usually requires up to 6 years of sampling, and you need somebody, usually a watershed planner, who's can help you with processing the data and making sure it's a well thought out and planned project. So I think that's all we have time for. I basically summed it up. I was gonna go into more detail about the 5 of these. If you have more questions about the specifics of them, feel free to either email me about it, or we're going to be around for a few minutes afterward. But we did ask a couple of the chemist. Well, we have a chemist here, and then we have Kelly, who is with sample receiving, who some of you, if you directly drop off your samples, might already know. They're here to ask any questions. So or answer questions. If anyone has any chemistry specific questions, or questions about sample receiving, like why we need to have why the date and time is important, or why we need to write delete on the field sheet, anything like that. So, does anyone in the room have any questions? No, Rudy, you're pretty good at this already, so. Yeah, you can go ahead.
What's done if stream is labeled high quality water? What does that do? Like, does it make it harder to?
Yes, that's a great question. Yeah, let's talk more about that afterward, because it's kind of complicated, because currently we don't have a way to implement higher protections, but you do. So you can petition the state to reclassify the stream to be under higher protections, but for some reason, the way we can't, as the biologists, say this needs higher protections.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Yeah.
From the point of view of like how
Yes.
could it be in the future, like, change the fishing regulations there,
Mhm. Yeah.
with fish.
Yeah, it would be specifically, so yeah, and I can show a slide on that to you afterward, but we would be raising the level of impairment. So instead of waiting till it gets all the way down to like poor quality, what we consider like a class, like failing the water quality standards, we would say can only get down to this much higher standard, and then we're going to enact an impairment status. And the EPA would require a total maximum daily load plan, and we'd start having management implications. I don't think it extends necessarily to fishing restrictions. It wouldn't be like that, but it would be like a plan to basically say, how are we going to get this stream back to higher quality?
There's no restriction on people eating the fish.
Right, exactly.
Severely impaired.
Right, yeah. So it wouldn't like it wouldn't mean that people couldn't eat the fish necessarily, because it still would be a very high quality stream. We're just trying to make the protections kick in sooner, so it doesn't get all the way down to bad water quality, which most streams just would have to hit like a very poor quality before we actually have stuff kick in. So yeah, it's kind of
Megan,
complicated bureaucratic thing. Yes.
This is a question way back from the beginning. I'm kind of confused about the difference between the river biomonitoring and the lakes monitoring program, LPP, LMP, and trying to figure out what we are, what our group is. I thought we were LPP, but that would mean we would be doing river monitoring, and seems like all our sites are very, very related to the lake. So could you clarify that a little?
Yeah, you're one of the weird groups, sorry, because and the reason why is because you're under Poultney Meadowy. I think next year we might want to separate you out because you really are a lake tributary group, because you're sampling Lake Bomazene tributaries. So so Mark Mitchell is looking at your data, and he's the one who's paying attention to it very closely for these like watershed action plans. But
Okay.
to not split your group down the middle, because Pulteney Meadowy is doing more traditional LaRosa stuff. So yeah, so that's why we didn't want to like split you down the middle if you're part of the same group. But I think next year we might want to separate you out into
Okay.
two groups, and then you
So
will
for
go
this-
into the yeah.
For this year, we're still sort of reporting to you via Hillary. Is that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Just to keep things simple and not have half of you be going one way and half the other. So
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, so that's why that's a bit confusing. And the reason we did that switch is because for the vast majority of our lake groups, they're not only collecting lake tributary samples, but they're also the ones collecting the lake samples. So instead of having them have to deal with me and my protocols and my schedule and pickups and stuff, and then deal with Mark separately, we just were like, and then Mark was the one who's most interested in the data. So we were like, why don't we cut me out as the middle person and just have them go directly to Mark for both? So that's the idea behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is getting used and he is looking at our
Yes,
data.
absolutely.
Even
Yep.
though
I
he's
sent
not. Okay.
it. I
Okay.
sent it to him. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Megan?
Oh, yes.
Hi, Tom Gentle. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Just out of curiosity, do other DECs or the equivalent in the Northeast, do they have programs to collect LPP equivalent data? And if so, do you all get together and share this? Are there venues where you share this kind of information like trout biologists do and such like that?
Yeah, that's so other DECs do. I know New Hampshire has and actually Connecticut River Joint Commission is double dipping. So they actually do monitoring for both New Hampshire and for us in Vermont. And then I know New York has one. I don't know about some of the other New England states, but then we do have there's this organization it's called NUEPIC, and it stands for like New England something something collaboration. I don't know. But that's like a federally funded organization that the whole point of their existence is to improve collaboration among states, specifically with environmental regulations and environmental monitoring. So we get together every year for a conference and we discuss this stuff, and then throughout the year we meet. So I actually missed yesterday because I was prepping for this training, the monitoring meeting of all the monitoring group or volunteer monitoring coordinators in the New England area. It also includes New York. So, oh yeah, someone put the link, or Benny put the link in the chat. Thank you. Yeah. Did you guys have anything?
I can answer any questions you have. My name's Karen, by the way. I work in the inorganic lab, and I can answer questions about analyzing the phosphorus, right? And I know a couple groups do turbine and TSS.
Not anymore. They used to. Yeah. Yeah. Does that? Yeah. So
like why some are preserved or
yeah. Yeah, that would be a great. So can we actually talk about why nitrogen is preserved?
So nitrogen needs to be acidified. Well, it's a total nitrogen test.
Right.
So there are different fractions and types of. So the one that we're worried about losing is ammonia. Ammonia is a fairly volatile form of nitrogen. So if you acidify it, it adds a little bit of charge to that ammonia, which makes it more happy to stay in water.
Oh, okay. Can the people online hear Karen down at the end? Maybe a little.
A little.
Okay, so basically, Karen, just to repeat, Karen said that the reason we acidify nitrogen is because with total nitrogen, we're looking at the nitrogen. It has different forms. So one of the forms is more volatile and more likely to escape into the air. So if you acidify it, it kind of stays in the water easier. Yeah.
Is the keeping it cold just also to help like slow down its reactions?
Yeah, just to slow down biological activity. And also to keep them on there. Solution.
Yeah. Any other questions specifically about the chemistry analysis?
Oh, so if the nitrogen is held kept longer before you get to test it, does that decrease the?
So we follow guidelines set out by EPA called standard methods. And they give a guideline of 28 days. After that, the data could be compromised. We haven't done a specific study to see what the impact is, like we have done for phosphorus. But if it is analyzed after 28 days, it's considered to not be as representative of what the site was at the time of sampling, and then it would get flagged. So that's been set out by standard methods. EPA studied it, so how they came up with that number, it was probably decades ago that they came up.
Mhm. Yeah, but I don't think, like, whether it's 1 day or 27 days, that data is comparable. That's why we preserve it. So, right, like 1 day after the collection, if you analyzed it,
And on day one.
yeah, versus
day
day
28.
27.
Or day 27.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so
Theoretically.
But you don't
theoretically
know
not.
for sure whether it's. Or
We would have to do a specific study, a controlled study. And we would, we have done this for phosphorus, we have to, like a very large volume of water that we partition into different sets of 6 samples that we know is very homogeneous. And that we keep preserved or refrigerated, and then on each day, after collection, okay, we check it, and we have to make multiples to make sure we're getting good hours, and it's very involved. We have done this for total phosphorus and also for ortho phosphorus, we have done it for nature.
But presumably
But-
EPA did that.
Yeah, for the national.
Yeah.
New England,
Gotcha.
Accreditation, Council or wherever. So theoretically, this was all done a long time ago, and set out the standard methods. So we get these huge book, each year, every 2 years, they set out a huge, it's literally this big.
Wow.
Dozens and dozens of methods, and they're very clear about how samples should be preserved. Or how long we can hold them.
Gotcha.
Which is why I have to follow hold times on all the samples you guys get to Megan. She picks up, Rudy brings in. They have to stay at a certain temperature. Each sample has a different time limit for a hold time. If, example, we get turbidity is what, 7 days? 2 days. No, it's 2 days for turbidity. That's right. Total suspended solids is 7. But that's why I have to watch it. If it comes in over temperature, I've got to flag it because I got to let these guys know. And when they go into Winlands to look at it and say, wait a minute, something, it might dry differently because it came in at 7 degrees Celsius, not 6 or under. It could affect how, process. The process will be the same. Their standard methods are the same, but the results may come out differently. So it's kind of something we both have to follow. I have to let them know what's going on and so that they can do their thing. What they need to do, but I have to follow my own standard procedures because I have things in sample receiving that follow that for our accreditation and certification, and we can't wiggle out of that. We are strictly, this is what you have to do and how you do it.
Yep.
If that helps.
Yeah.
Is there a standard procedure that happens if a duplicate in a regular sample or outside the specified limits? Does that just get eliminated from analysis?
No. So we do our own in-house duplicating of samples. So we have criteria that we need to keep, make sure are being followed or being met for precision and for accuracy. So we do duplicates for every 20 samples. We'll take like your nitrogen, the 1 nitrogen sample from one site, but we'll prep 2 times. So that's an in-house do. If that were to fail, we would flag it. If it were to fail, like we have, if we got a failure of more than like 1% of our samples, then we might start to either consider trying to troubleshoot what's going on with our method, or maybe we need to change our criteria. Maybe this is just not what the method can do. For phosphorus, for example. Phosphorus really likes to stick to particles, sediments, and just depending on how well we can get those particles mixed homogeneously, you can have really different results. Your 2 different portions can have really good results. So for that one, we have a slightly larger criteria for 20% actually. Whereas for like ammonia, that just naturally very, when it's well preserved, it's a very homogeneous analyte, and we have very tight criteria for that. But we don't know when you send us in field tubes.
Yeah.
Theoretically, we have no idea.
Yeah.
So whatever you guys are your
Right.
criteria.
So for us, for field dupes, we will flag it. It's different for each parameter, similar like phosphorus, it's 30% different. We allow because because our field dupes aren't from a parent, so we don't just take the same sample and pour it into 2 bottles. We take one and then another. So they can be very different just environmentally, not incredibly different, but there is natural variation. If it's greater than 30%, that's when we flag it for phosphorus. If it's nitrogen, it's greater than 20%. And for chloride, it's 10% difference because that tends to be very consistent. The only time I delete it is if I see in the sample comments, I got contamination in the sample. And then I'm like, well, that is obviously contaminated. I can see it in the numbers. So then I'll delete that one because if I know it's contaminated, there's no point of keeping that in the data set. But generally speaking, if I'm just not sure, I just put an S code on it and it just says suspect in the database. So, yeah.
The phosphorus, does it depend on the sample site too, because you're saying phosphorus is just naturally water from.
That'd be a question that maybe you would know, because I don't know what these sites are. So
Because I was
theoretically,
thinking like the bedrock and.
Yeah, that could be, yeah. Yeah, but usually, like I know with salt, that can be the case too. Like some places are just a little bit naturally more salty, but the human impact is really obvious because and I think we're usually looking at phosphorus levels that are well above what we would expect in the background. Yeah. I mean, sediment naturally has phosphorus in it, so that's why we're trying not to get the contamination because we don't want to be measuring just the phosphorus that's in the sediment. Yeah. So the nitrogen does not have to be acidified within 24 hours of being sampled. No, it does.
Follow up to the previous question.
Okay, so yeah. All right, I
Oh.
think people are hopping off because we hit 4 o'clock. So thank you everyone for attending. And again, if you have any more questions, you can stay on with us or you can send me or Benny an email. So thank you so much and have a good rest of your afternoon.
You want me to read out the business question?
Yeah, sure. Did it not get answered?
I don't think so.
I
Oh,
can ask it. Can you
Yeah.
hear me? Okay.
yes, I can hear you.
So I was wondering if it has to be acidified within 24 hours, which you said it does, but that would mean that I would need to receive that sample and acidify it within 24 hours, right?
Yes.
So I would have to coordinate
Yes.
with that nitrogen sampler, like essentially like maybe the day before. That you would have to sample it on a Monday and then drop it off that night, and then within those 24 hours, I'd have to come on Tuesday and acidify it.
Yes, or the alternative is if you think that volunteer and the volunteer is open to it, the alternative would be we train them to do the acidification instead of you. So
Okay,
that would be
noted.
the alternative. Yeah.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, no problem.
Because the sample receiving, I have to pH test all
Yep.
your nitrogen, whether it's ammonia, NOx, total nitrogen. I have to do all the metals. I have to go in and pH test things, and we have to record in sample receiving that if we come across a sample that is